We know our area has been layered on over and over again. Environmental degradation that actually is hurting our health and our property values and all of those things that we see. So except we've been here, we started in 2013, actually out of East Liverpool, Ohio. We work from the Upper River, Ohio Valley, and we go clear to Portsmouth, Ohio. So it's right where Ohio, West Virginia, PA meet, and then we go all the way down toward Kentucky, West Virginia, and Ohio meet. All right, so I'm going to turn this over to Jamie and Tara. They're going to talk to you guys for a few minutes, and then we're going to get right into the meat of it, okay? Hi, guys. Can everybody hear me? No. All right, so first of all, I want to thank you guys for showing up today. My name is Jamie Koza, for those of you who don't know me. I grew up right here in East Palestine. My cousin Tara is going to speak here in a minute. I think we counted my immediate family members on both sides. There are 47 of us that live within this evacuation zone. You know, we have deep roots in this community. My personal story, I live right back here, kitty corner to the Muse parking lot. They lifted this evacuation and they told me it was safe to go home. When they came to do my air test, I insisted on water testing and soil sampling. My basement's 5 steps from that creek. Because I was persistent and because I used my voice, I got the railroad to come to my house to send a toxicologist there who deemed my house unsafe to be in. They offered us money, all relocation costs, but we weren't going to do that. We weren't going to leave our community behind. If they were wrong about my house, they could be wrong about your house. If my kid deserves to be safe, your kids deserve to be safe. And no one else can fight this for us. We have to come together as a community. I don't care if you're red or blue. I don't care if I beat you up 10 years ago, you know, in the bar. We need to come together right now and use our voices because no one else is going to fight with us. And I don't want this message of EP is, you know, they're weak, they're helpless right now. We're EP strong, and it's time to show the world that. We need support from the outside, but we're at war. We're at war with corporate greed, with the politicians that have this money lined in their pocket. We're here for one issue, and that's to make our town safe and to make sure none of this happens again in our town or any other town. We deserve answers. You know, we've all told our stories now and got it out. Everybody knows what the issue is. But now we need to place demands upon the railroad, and we need accountability. So we need to switch our focus from, you know, here I am, these are my issues, to what action are people going to take? We need help now. Not when these lawsuits come in, not 10 years down. We might not be here to ever see that money come in. We weren't a community that was sick and now we're getting better. We're a community that thought we were good and now we're sick. I'm watching my entire family, my community, and my best friends be poisoned slowly. So it's time for us to stick together and speak up and be heard. It's great we have all this press here right now, but the press is going to leave. River Valley's not going anywhere. This is going to be years and years and years of testing, not just one test and everything's fine. It's not in our heads. We're getting sick. So we need to stand up as a community. We need to organize ourselves. We need to get together, and we need to show the world that EP is standing strong together. Yeah. This is one of my cousins, and again, if I know media and stuff keeps hearing, well, this is my cousin, my mom, my dad. There's a lot of us that live there. So Tara's not going to just be telling her story, but the story of our 91-year-old grandmother that lives basically at ground zero, that most of the people in the room probably know one or both of our grandparents. So, Tara?
Hi, everybody. My name is Tara Johnson. I'm a lifelong resident of East Palestine. I'm very proud of that. I'm not going to tell you my story because I'm going to tell you a story that's really important to me. My grandparents, they moved here 70 years ago, Art and Midge Koza. I bet you some of you know them, right? Yeah. So my grandfather passed away about 1.5 years ago, and my grandma, the night of the train derailment, she lives 3 doors down from me. So of course we heard it happen. Sorry. Of course we heard it happen. And we all were outside, and initially we just didn't think, we're so used to the noises from the trains that we weren't really, we knew something was different, but we weren't sure. And my fiance actually was like, that's serious, that's a train crash. So we went outside, didn't see much. Next thing you know, there's flames just building, and you guys all saw them, you saw how high they were, and we live on East Clark Street. So what it seemed like to us, it almost looked like the homes were on fire, and it kept moving back. And so my grandma, she's going to be 91 in April, actually, our grandma, she, there was a state highway patrolman, because of course, then all the firemen came, and she's yelling at me. So
Speak up!
Trying.
All the way out there.
No pressure. Anyhow, the state highway patrolman told my uncle, who my grandma lives with, that they should probably leave at that point. So she got her medicine and took her purse, and off they went. And something to me that really, really struck home with me and really made me want to speak tonight is talking to her in conversation. She looked at me and she said, Tara, she said, as me and Dan were driving away, she said, I turned around and looked at my house. By the way, we lived there for 56 years. I turned around and wondered if I'm ever going to see it again. I wondered if I was going to be able to go back. I wondered if your past Marine uniform was going to still be there, if I would ever see it again. His Marine picture, her senior picture, she said, and not to mention the memories of all you kids, because all of us grew up there. It was, you showed up, you don't need to be invited, you just show up. So now at night, the last thing she should be worrying about is if she's going to fall asleep, if that's not the case. She lays there, she can't sleep. She's worried about, am I going to eventually have to leave my home that she loves so much? She's worried about the future health of her children and grandchildren, and her community members. She loves this town. And, she raised 9 kids plus all of us grandkids, and I don't even have an accurate count for you, but I believe, like Jamie said, there's 47 altogether. So that's a little bit, and when it came to evacuation time, the first night we went to my other uncle's house, it was a mile and a half away, so at least we weren't on the tracks, because like I said, she's 3 doors down. My aunt is right next door as well. Went there the first night and then found out that wasn't so unsafe, so my 90-year-old grandma's living out of the hotel room, want to buy clothes as she goes, it's sad for her. It's sad knowing that she's laying there every night. And so here's something that I think is really important that might be being overlooked, is the mental health aspect of this whole train. We're all talking about our respiratory issues. Yes, they're real. But what is also real, and also it doesn't get said or spoken of enough, is the mental health aspect. And my grandma did give me permission to talk about the story about her sleeping. That's her mental health part, right? She's nervous. She has anxiety. I have 3 children. And I'm only going to speak for my youngest because she's 15. My twins are 23. They can speak for themselves. But so her dad lives in New Waterford out in the country. We immediately she went there. She felt safe there. Of course, it wasn't safe at our house. So we evacuated to my fiance's daughter's house and visited with my daughter. So she came home 9 days after the train wreck, because who doesn't want to be at their home? She just got a brand new bedroom suit, right? She's there. She looked at me and said, Mom, I don't feel real safe. I'm going to go back to Dad's. As a mom, you know how that hit me. Like, we're here to keep our kids safe. And here is my baby. She's 15 to all of you, but she's my baby. She doesn't feel safe there. And it's not me. She doesn't feel safe in her own home. That being said, how do I fix that? How can I say, hey, Angela, do you want to come home? Will you come home? How can I do that? And she asked me, she goes, Mom, can you promise me to stay there? Can't. And if I could take that burden from my daughter, from my grandmother, my cousins, my aunts, uncles, I absolutely would. And I think, ask your children, ask your neighbor, ask everybody, because there's a lot of the mental health. It should not go overlooked. I know there's hotlines out there and things like that. There's a lot of support.
We're going to be doing a town hall for the youth. We're organizing it next week too, so you guys know. We're in just the planning phases of it, but there are just so many different issues that we're hearing every day when we talk about mental health. These aren't just stories. These are my family members, my community members. Everyone has a different issue, whether it's you have a mortgage and you can't leave, your kids are sick, You got fired from your job. You had to come back into town. Let's talk about Negley being forgotten. Pennsylvania. I can't do this myself. This group of people can't do this ourselves. This tragedy, something of this magnitude, we have to come together as a community. We need to network. If you know somebody that can come in and help. You know, some of the nonprofits even can't handle the capacity of what's...
We do have some soil and water testing that we're able to make available to folks as soon as Saturday for folks that, and I'll go into it later, but just some things where folks can actually be able to have their well systems looked at, their pipes looked at, and those things. And we're going to be asking for signups for those. But we have a lot of scientists and things are really out here to help us and to get the full spectrum of testing, not being charged by anybody and without being beholden to anyone.
Woo! Yeah. Woo! All right, so I'll get started. Hi, everybody. My name is Carla, and I'm a professor at the University of Pittsburgh. I'm in the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering there, and I study chemicals and specifically chemical fate and transport in the environment and chemicals that accumulate in humans and
Microphone? Could you guys speak up?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Stephen Lester, Stephen with a PH, L-E-S-T-E-R. And I work with an organization called the Center for Health, Environment, and Justice. We're based in Falls Church, Virginia. And we're also affiliated with People's Action Institute. My work at the center is to review health information and science directed there, and my job is to look at science information, health studies, engineering reports, environmental testing. I've been doing this for over 40 years. I got my start in this work when I was hired by the state of New York to be a science advisor to the residents of Love Canal. So, where I had, the last time I've seen a meeting like this was at Love Canal. People at Love Canal are angry, frustrated, confused, and I sense that's what's also going on here. But I'm here tonight to help answer questions you may have about the science. That's been my work for 40 years. That's what I've helped people to understand and to provide an honest assessment of what that is. So I'm here to try to do that, and I'll do my best to give you some honest answers about the science side, the health side in particular.
Thank you, Stephen. Chief Sill.
Is there any way to make this louder? The people in the lobby cannot hear anything.
All right, so can you guys project your voice loud?
Talking backwards. Don't shut up.
Please stop talking. It's here in here.
Front room, quiet.
All right, my name is Saverio Caggiano, for the media, S-I-L-V-E-R-I-O. Last name C-A-G-G-I-A-N-O. I'm a retired battalion chief in the Youngstown Fire Department for 39 years. I'm a hazardous materials, weapons, and mass destruction specialist. I have sat on the state hazmat technical advisory committee for the state of Ohio that I just recently retired from. And I also work with Buckeye Environmental Network trying to get information out and do things for people like yourselves that have found themselves in a challenging situation. I'm here to discuss anything you want to discuss as far as operations and dealing with the spill cleanup, any advice that I can give. I've been doing it now probably for the better part of 2 weeks, talking to various people. I've tried to get this out to the media, make sure it stays in the media. I was just on MSNBC this morning trying to make sure they don't forget about you people down here.
My name is Heather Holton Van Tassel. You spell my last name, capital H-U-L-T-O-N, space, capital B-A-N, capital T-A-S-S-E-L. I'm the executive director of Three Rivers Waterkeeper, and we work to protect the water quality of the Ohio, Allegheny, and Monongahela rivers. So those make up the headwaters of the Ohio River Basin. So what's happening here is affecting you, and it's affecting millions of people downstream. And it's really important that people understand that you're a community that's really working to protect all those millions of people, those downstream neighbors that will be impacted eventually. And I'm here to help you understand what some of the surface water quality reports that are coming out of the environmental protection agencies, what that might mean for you, and what kind of questions you might want to ask.
My name is John Heer, H-E-E-R. I'm an attorney with Fair Shake Environmental Legal Services. I am here really just to listen to you guys and to hear what you have to say. I hope I can shed some light from a legal perspective on some of the things that have gone on and will be going on, sorry. But we can't, obviously as a lawyer, I have to be careful what I say, and we're not having a lawyer-client relationship, and I'm not here to get business. That's not my role. My role here is just to listen, and maybe if I can shed some light from a general perspective, I hope to do that. But that's my limit here. I should say that at some point in the very near future, perhaps in the next 30 to 60 days, we'll have a legal clinic where you can actually come in one-on-one with an attorney. We'll have all of our attorneys here, and we'll have sessions like that so that you can individually get advice from attorneys, but not tonight.
So,
What kind of danger is he in because of the soil out there? Because they were actually cutting the train cars up in his shop parking lot. So what kind of dangers is he facing with breathing that? Is he bringing that stuff home to our grandkids on his clothes? What are the dangers? Do we need to look for another job? Those are my questions.
Okay, who would like to try to talk with them first? There you go, answer a question.
Okay, that is a question I suspect a lot of people have here in terms of what's safe. Be testing done. Otherwise, nobody will understand really what the risks are. We can all guess and hypothesize, and your anxiety will just continue to raise and raise and raise. So I think it's really important that there be testing done, not just of the air, which they're doing a little bit of, but they need to be testing the soil. They need to be testing. Be looking for not just a few chemicals that they've honed in on. The one chemical that just absolutely amazes me that they're not looking for is a group of chemicals referred to as dioxins. I don't know if you've heard of this yet, but when you burn a chlorinated chemical like vinyl chloride, you generate dioxins. Dioxins, this category, there's like 75 of these dioxins. One of them is the most toxic chemical ever tested in the United States. It is a nasty chemical. And so there's a reason, I think, why the government isn't testing for this, and why, if the EPA has made one major mistake in their testing thus far, it was ignoring dioxin, almost pretending like it didn't exist. There's a long history in the EPA. Our organization had a campaign. We wrote books, several of them, about dioxin from the mid-90s into the early 2010s. And EPA still has not released its final cancer assessment for dioxins. And they won't release it because when they did their risk analysis, they found that the risk was so high that they would have to shut down good portions of the American economy.
is that?
And I'm not saying that, I'm not overstating this. I'm really not. So dioxin is generated when that black, it's in the dust. Dioxin, which is a heavy chemical, it'll be found in the dust. So when that black cloud, and when they were burning all that stuff, there was lots of dioxin in there. How much? Nobody knows, because they did not test it.
So the dirt that they're pulling out into our streets every day, is they're going in there and taking out this debris? They're leaving mud all over the streets, and their streets will be there.
I don't know that there's... It's like a chloracne. It's very similar. But so it attacks your skin. And but there are a lot of subtle effects from dioxin exposure. Central nervous system, liver, reproductive outcomes, developmental problems, a lot of long-term problems. They're not necessarily something that, going to make somebody sick immediately. And that's the subtlety of that make it very complicated to try to figure out whether anybody's symptoms are due to dioxin.
So it's not that they can't test for dioxin, that they won't?
They haven't yet. The reasons I don't know. They haven't yet.
Right, there is a test for it.
Oh, yes.
They did say today on the press conference that they were going to check down the road for that. Whether they
that has to be part of their cleanup plan. They can't define a cleanup plan until they know where the contamination is.
We've got a question in the back.
Could you explain, like, the properties behind the dioxin? Like, will it break down eventually on its own? Is it stuck here for good? Does it stay on top of the water? How does it break down in soil? If we have to rely on the environment to break this down and put it back into itself, if they don't get it out?
Dioxin is it does not degrade very easily. It will be around for many, many, many years. It's as I mentioned, it forms the chemical reaction that creates dioxin from the vinyl chloride, for example, is largely going to occur on dust particles, particulates, that black material that you saw. And it's a large, heavy chemical, so it's going to fall out pretty quickly. It's not going to travel that far. It can, the dust in the sediment in rivers, it doesn't really absorb.
And then also Dr. Ng, is that just your specialty also, right? Is dioxin?
Yeah, well, sure. So I just want to talk a little bit about the complexity of the stuff they should be testing for, because it's not just one chemical, right? So when we talk about vinyl chloride, that's one chemical, and we kind of understand it fairly well. But what happened was you had a fire occur, and during fire, all the chemicals mix and they transform into other things, and even dioxins is not just one chemical, it's a class of chemicals. And so there have to be testing for the suite of things that might have formed. And those suite of chemicals all have slightly different properties. So the heavier they are, the faster they'll fall out of the air, basically. And so one of the things is, as we think about, who's affected, how far should we be looking, is a little bit about where those smoke plumes went, and then at what point would the different chemicals fall out. And this is why soil testing is so critical, so that we start to understand the width of this cloud and how far things are affected. And for dioxins and chemicals like dioxins, once they are in the soil, they don't break down very easily. And another property of them is because they're big and heavy, they tend to start to accumulate in certain pools, and that includes sometimes inside organisms. So we do have to think about whether, over time, if the chemicals are present in the soil, they might be present at low concentrations now, but they can start accumulating in the food web. So they could wind up in the fish, and when you consume the fish.
The phrase, they nuked the town to open up a railroad, was because of a video I saw from a person in Darlington, Pennsylvania, where there's a cloud over top of his house, and there's this black precipitous soot coming down. And when I seen the soot, being a fireman, I know what that is. When you're in a house fire, you start looking around after the fire's out, and there's just black cobwebs in the corners of the house. Well, those aren't cobwebs. What they are is complex molecules, hydrocarbon molecules, that have reconstituted themselves in a chain and hang like that. And the first thing that hit my mind was, my God, what have they done? I immediately started to think of dioxins, furans, all these other potential chemicals that could have precipitated out. And this has to be tested for fairly quickly because we're getting close to planting season around here. And there are root crops that will take this stuff up. Potatoes, carrots. One of the ones that I never liked Brussels sprouts as a kid, and I know now why. Because Brussels sprouts take up just about anything into their organization structure. They take up radium, they'll take up dioxins, they'll take up anything, and it'll be in there. And what you're going to end up doing is, if you buy local, you might be re-eating the stuff that you had in here. As far as any dust and any chemicals that might be present in the dust, I've told everybody that I can tell, go to your family physician and get a baseline physical now. If you own a well, get a baseline now. What is or is not in your water. Get that done now. If you have soot or anything that you suspect that could be contaminated, get a sample of it. Have them test it. Video yourself taking the sample so that later on Norfolk can't say that you doctored up a sample. But get it tested now, because this is long term. Dioxins will hang around for a long, long time. Probably, what, about 100 years? Something like that? Yeah, it'll stay in the soil for 100 years.
Somebody mentioned that all these gases up in the air, it drops acid after it.
Well, the hydrochloric acid that was potentially formed when they burned off a lot of that, if it hits with the water, you're going to have what's called acid rain. But being a milled community in Youngstown, we were fairly used to it all the time. That's why the buildings turned black from the acid rain. I was more concerned with getting into the water streams, and now they're re-aerosolizing the stuff out of there, and it's just, they call it vaporization or volatilization, but all it is it's throwing it up in the air, and it's allowing the air to carry off the particles, and it's reintroducing it into your air.
How long does that take to get into a well? If it's maybe 20 feet.
A discussion that I had with Dr. Julie Weatherington Rice on Wednesday, she's saying anywhere from 6 months to 2 years, depending on the strata that you're around. This area was heavily mined.
It's out of the Darlington, and you don't have to dig deep.
Yeah.
To get water.
I think your water table around here was 60 feet, something like that. Yeah.
Bye.
We have, to the lady in the blue shirt in the middle. She's next. She's next.
All right.
All right, bye.
Hi.
Hi. My name's Kevin Costco. I'm a resident here in East Palestine, Adams Road. My company, K2 Environmental, this is what we do.
One in the back!
We do testing, and we'd love to work with you folks. We, have a well here, and we have a dog in this race. And my question is the controlled burn, so-called controlled burn that they did. Was that the proper thing to do? It seemed more like a detonation, and then the releasing that stuff was the most expeditious way to get rid of the source. But was it the most prudent way to get rid of the source?
In answer to your question about the detonation and burning, in the city of Youngstown, we have 3 railroad tracks that run through our town. So I make sure that my guys in the fire department, at least once every year, once every other year, are trained on railroad incidents. The studies that I have ever done, all the case studies that I've done since this incident, I cannot find one incident where they have detonated all the cars in a trench and burned them off. Now, they're not calling it detonation and burn anymore. They're calling it flaring, because I guess that sounds a little better. But, basically what they did is they took a potential. There was a potential that tanker could blow up. I don't know all the temperature gradients. I haven't seen that data yet just to ascertain whether or not it would. But you got to remember, monochloride boils at about 8 degrees Fahrenheit. It boils at a very low temperature, so I don't know if it was going to blow or not. I don't know what they did or if they did it at all. But under the assumption that it did, it would have thrown shrapnel around, maybe did a couple more tankers, and that would have been the extent of the damage. This guaranteed that all the chemicals were going to be dumped in one place at one time, and in my 39 years working in hazmat, go back to my original statement that got out in the media. They did it to open up a railroad.
The NTSB said that the car, the reading on the car was 140 degrees, with the explosion level estimated at 187 or so was when, I guess, the Norfolk Southern, their own procedures clicked in and said that, they needed to do something about pressurization. So you were approaching a threshold, it seems like, but it wasn't a critical mass. It seems like something you could have cooled, vented.
Try something,
Well, from what I've seen from the news media, local news media, the video feeds that I was looking at, it had pretty much vented. The top was open, it was vented. I had heard, and I can't prove this one way or the other, that they were putting unmonitored master streams on the tankers to pull it off, and Norfolk Southern told them to pull it off because they weren't doing it. I don't know if that's true or not, but I've heard through my grapevines that that's what was done. The cooling off could have done it. The temperature gradients could have fell off You don't know. If you just let it boil off, you don't know. But what they did was they took a potential and they made it a for sure. And I coined another phrase this morning on MSNBC. I call it the laboratory experiment from hell. Because we basically dump a ton of chemicals into a pit and burn them off. And anybody that's been in chemistry, when you do that, you don't know what you're going to get when you're done. So
Let's think, do they even know what to test for? When all these things came together and burn?
probably not.
I get lady in the back.
Hi, my name is Ashley. I was wondering what you suggest would be the best way to get tested for dioxin, because I had my own personal test through an independent company. They worked with me. They said they can't even test for all the chemicals that were released, even the ones that were released by the EPA. But they're more known for testing radon, mold, those other things. So it's pretty hard to get a hold of someone that can do the testing properly. And I'm seeing that throughout the town with the air monitors as well.
I can answer just a little. One of the things is one of our researchers, and I'm going to give it to you also, Carol, because I know you have something to say with it. We have researchers, and we're going to be asking folks to sign up first. So we have scientists that, again, like we said, aren't paid by anybody. They're going to be rolling some of these things out for you. And also, I want to pass it to Carol. So this is her forte.
Yeah, it can be difficult because labs tend to specialize on things that they can measure all the time, and this is really specialized thing that happens. So this is one of the things, and I can't even give you a list of labs except here, you can go here. Right? But what I can say is that there are a lot of people at universities, like I am, who are trying to figure out how we can get some funding so that we can go out and take samples and figure this out, because we need this data, right? We need to understand what's happening. And for dioxins, it's difficult because you need a high-res mass spec. It's a big, expensive instrument that not a lot of people have. And you need to be able to measure at really low concentrations. That's the other thing. If you have just like a sensor you can stick out there and it'll tell you you've got, milligrams of this stuff, it's not going to help. Because with the highly toxic compounds, you need to be able to get really sensitive measurements as well.
So in your opinion, the boxes that are set up in town, do you think that would be an accurate way to read? In your own opinion, I know it's a little bit difficult.
I don't know exactly what they're all measuring for, but I think what you need to look at is, if I were to go and look, and this is how I would find out for myself, is I would look at what they're measuring and look at their limits of detection. And once you understand what the limit of detection is, that's the lowest amount they can measure. Compare that limit of detection to whatever's been published about when you expect to see health effects. You need to be able to get down to below when health effects are seen to have some faith in measurement.
Thank you. The lady in the glasses. Yeah, that's you. I'm sorry, sunglasses right now.
Hi, I'm an East Palestine resident. Should we have, the things that are coming in with smells and stuff that's in the creek, have there been an evacuation a half mile from the creek as well because of what was in the creek?
Who would like to talk about this? There you go.
Hi, I can't say whether or not you should be evacuated. That is something that emergency responders have been able to tell you. I will say I've been examining the data that Ohio EPA has put on their website. It's publicly available. You can all download it. I'm sure you don't want to, though. It's 232 pages.
I'm concerned, and I don't know what's in the creek right now.
And so the statement that it's not contaminated is false. You will find 15 sites that are highly contaminated. Some of these things that shouldn't really be in the waters. We know vinyl chloride, for instance, was dumped, and this was over 5,000 parts per billion found in the surface water in the
but our dogs are swimming in those creeks.
So
kids are swimming in those creeks.
I would highly recommend staying away from surface water until you can have someone come at your exact location along a run and say whether it's safe or not. Now the thing is, some of their surface water tests had nothing that they found. So some of the locations are still safe because of the way the water and the contaminants are flowing. Some of your sites might be extremely contaminated. And that's what's really important is that, yes, they might do 50 tests, but if you're the 51 location that hasn't been tested, they cannot tell you it's safe. So that's something you really need to think about. Just because your neighbor's safe doesn't mean you're safe. Just because someone a mile away is safe doesn't mean you're safe. And just because they're saying it's undetectable doesn't mean where you are they can't find contamination. So I highly suggest you go get, talk to Norfolk Southern, really push for your locations to be tested.
Thank you.
I'll speak loud now.
Okay.
Sorry,
what
I'm getting this.
exactly is the odor? So I went down to the creek myself after watching the news. And the guy took a stick across. And it smelled perfectly fine when I went down until I disturbed the water. I threw a rock in the water, and I called my wife and I said, literally, it suffocated me for a minute. This isn't psychosomatic. It was literally, the air was so heavy, I couldn't breathe for a minute.
You got to remember that some of these chemicals float in water, some of these chemicals sink in water. When you throw the rock in, you're disturbing the chemicals that sink in water. And they're going to come to the surface, and they're going to aerosolize, and they're going to vaporize, and you're going to smell that.
Oh, it knocked me back.
That's just the sad fact of the chemicals that got dumped in there. They're testing vinyl chlorides. I think they have butyl acrylate they got in there. I mean, these are not good chemicals in there.
Are they testing surface and sediment at the bottom? Because if
That-
it sinks
that I
and you test
don't-
the surface, you're not going to see anything.
That I don't know, and I can't even tell by looking at their testing programs
And they're not
what
even
they're testing.
chemicals on the derail list, so where'd that come from then?
There were a lot of chemicals in some of the sample locations, yes, that aren't immediately in the manifesto that's shared with the public. There were, releases of hydrocarbons, which some of them can be heavy and dense and float to the bottom, which is most likely what you're seeing, but can't say without testing. The surface water testing is what we primarily focused on because that was what was available on their website without waiting the weeks upon weeks after submitting right to knows. So I can't say what's in your sediment, but I've also have had people share images with them going out to these streams and using a stick and pushing up the chemicals that are stuck on the bottom that would not normally be there. And so, the sediment is worth also asking for testing, and because it's most likely contaminated if you're going to have that intense of an aroma. Your common sense to go away, listen to it. Don't tell people they push you away.
I want to say something about that in my own personal experience that I shared. I didn't come back to my home until that Sunday because we needed to get prescriptions. I went up to the park in Dagley. As soon as I pulled in my driveway and smelled that, I knew they were lying to me. I knew that stuff was toxic. And that's why I didn't stop. I followed my gut. We're being forced to take our kids into these homes that we don't feel are safe, that we can't tell them is safe.
I just wanted to draw an analogy for you people. You're going to start hearing a lot of these things. Parts per billion, parts per trillion. Let me put that in context. If there was a billion ping pong balls sitting outside of this room, and with a chemical like ammonia, it's smellable at 4/100ths of a billion parts per billion. If 4/100ths of a ping pong ball got in this room, you'd smell it. Parts per trillion. Again, imagine a trillion ping pong balls outside of this room. And if one or two got in, I think, the dioxin's 5 parts per trillion or something like that? 7, yeah. If 7 of those ping pong balls, 7 of a trillion ping pong balls got in here, you'd start suffering effects from it. That's to give you an idea of what this all is. And there's a lot of other things that they're going to be saying, threshold limit values and time-weighted averages. And it's a game that they're playing. They come in here and they drink their water. It's just like smoking one cigarette. You're probably not going to get cancer from smoking one cigarette. When you stay here and live and breathe this stuff and drink the water, that's the whole thing. And it's not what's here now that's measurable. It's the minute, as you mentioned, it's the minute quantities that are there that over a 20, 30-year period are going to build up to that big bag of nasty stuff that you're going to have.
I can just pop them out.
All right,
Okay.
got them out.
Back to the whole blood work thing, how she brought up. It's kind of a big guessing game for everything, and this is where my family is at right now. And it's basically, besides the baseline blood work of your CBC and your BMP, is there anything that they can detect and test for that you're recommending? Somebody said heavy metals because you don't know what all is in there. I mean, you could just suggest a million things, but other besides the basic CBC, BMP overall, is that, we'll do that and call it a day, or is there something else you guys would recommend that these local physicians maybe have not thought of?
There are tests
the other lady's question also, there are tests for dioxin in blood. That can be done.
It can be done by just anybody, or does it have to be done, how she said it, like a university where they're studying specific
Yes, no,
and
it
have the
cannot-
equipment?
It cannot be done by anybody. There are only probably maybe a dozen labs in the United States that can analyze for dioxin.
That could be one of the mobile labs they bring in then.
Yes, that can be done. They could set up a mobile lab with the equipment.
Do you know of anyone that's like local for people here that do that, or are these labs that are like beyond what people here are going to be
I
able to go
don't
to?
know off the top of my head what it is a lab here.
So Wayne State University is going to be coming in and doing some testing for folks of their blood levels. So they're going to start first with the first responders to get that ran into those that night. So if you guys know a first responder, please put them in touch with us so we can get their blood levels tested. What I was told is the first 90 days that this needs tested. So that those are those things. And then following the first responders, they're going to reach out to the general public, but they're wanting to start with the first responders first within the next week.
How do they go about that? I mean, is it something you sign up for, or they're just
Yeah,
going
so
to
if you guys will, what we'll do is when you guys leave, sign up with us as you're going out, and then we will follow back up with folks.
Okay, thank you.
Well, what it is that we're live streaming also, so they won't hear your question.
As an avid outdoorsman, my question is, what is the effect on the wildlife? You know, I try to use wildlife to subsidize food for my family, and I know this community and outside this community does the same thing. How far down the watershed do people in the communities and further communities got to be worrying about the deer, fish, squirrels, rabbits, all of that? Like that's my main question.
Stephen, just like pass it on down.
Well, a lot of the chemicals that were in the fire, were in the train, are not necessarily going to travel much distance. The exception is dioxin. Dioxin is a fat-soluble compound, and I'm speaking dioxin as if it were a single chemical, but as Carl pointed out, it's not. And so, but it is fat-soluble. And so, if a cow eats grass where dioxin has settled from the air, it will get into the cow. And that means it gets into the milk, because that's fat-soluble, it gets into the hamburger, and so on and so forth. So any animal that feeds on or drinks water that's been contaminated will, for dioxin in particular, will accumulate that compound. And then, like in the fish in particular, it bioaccumulates so that the smaller fish might get it, and then the bigger fish will eat it, and they'll collect all the dioxin in the smaller fish, so that if they eat, so you can see how eating 10 smaller fish, you're going to have quite the concentration in the larger fish. So it's a problem. It's definitely a problem, and it needs to be looked at as part of the picture.
Awesome. Let me get some of the folks over here in the back and the left. Where's our? Oh, you got it. There you go. You got one.
With some of the symptoms being things like sore throats and stuff like that, those could also be COVID symptoms. Should we be taking COVID tests just so Norfolk can't say that it's COVID?
I'm not a scientist, but I will say yes.
My doctor said yes.
Absolutely. You don't want to give them anything for them to put mud into your case.
Many of the chemicals that were released affect the upper respiratory system, so eyes, ears, nose, throat, and so almost every one of them virtually, that's their primary target organ. So that it makes a lot of sense that people are reacting from all of that. So yeah, that's not things like dioxin, but it is the butyl glycol ethers and some of the other chemicals that are there. Ethylene.
Is that okay?
Emily in the back.
Yeah, I'm a registered nurse, so just ensure when you're getting here, I'm just negative
COVID test with a timestamp, that you actually get an antibody test with the exact date and time because, COVID antibodies stay for 3 months. So there's that timetable of where they could say, okay, you had a negative COVID test here, but were you positive before? So make sure that's dated and
We have some questions over here first. Yes, sir.
EPA could get away with not doing their job. Like, they did nothing for us. Where's the EPA? How can they not be held accountable? It makes no sense to me.
Can I get your name,
And
too?
then Norfolk can do this to this country? It makes no sense at all. Nothing makes sense here.
More folks paid.
There are citizen supervision, so I'm going to give that over here to John and let him, I wanted him to speak up, make sure he talks about those options for you all.
I think it's hard to say definitively how much work EPA at the federal level or at the state level. We've got 3 states involved here, so we've got departments and agencies from all 3 states that are being affected. It's hard to say how much effort they're putting in because a lot of it we're not going to see. I think it was yesterday that U.S. EPA, the federal level, announced that they were taking over the remediation from Norfolk Southern, which I think is a good development. I think that means we've got one principal source that is going to be spearheading the effort of the remediation. My hope is that we can use that one source for information too. But in terms of trying to go back to the scene of the crime, if we'll call it that, we'll leave it at that. But if you go back to that, it really is hard to say who is doing what when. And until NTSB, I think, finishes their investigation and really determines all of those facts, it's going to be hard for us to know in the public because we're relying on media, we're relying on press releases from the agencies. It's going to be difficult to find the truth here, and so I think we have to wait a little bit before we can reach conclusions about who did what when.
But everything was done wrong. Everything was done wrong. If you talk to the scientists, you cannot burn those chemicals at low temperature. You have to burn them at a very high temperature. The EPA is supposed to be educated. They did nothing for us. They should be fired, all of them.
Why didn't they use that phone?
They are. They do nothing.
I don't understand that.
All right, we've got a question here. The next question in the back.
Okay, so you guys talked about dioxins and like what would happen to livestock, like if they were like eating pastures and everything. So do you guys know, is there anything known about like the effects on like pregnant or lactating animals, or like what would happen to, because me for instance, I have 2 goats that are due within like 2 or 3 weeks. I had them locked in, but obviously the people in Darlington, I was at a house sitting client in East Palestine, I had maybe an hour's worth of notice. So I locked my goats in and hoped for the best. We didn't get any notice at all. So is there any known effect on like pregnant, lactating animals? If you want to make it more important than that, maybe expand it to pregnant people, if that matters more. Any known effect at all?
Specifically, it's hard to say because I don't know, what was happening where you were in terms of the cloud or the chemicals that in the car. Generally, dioxin, because it's fat soluble, breast milk, mother's milk, tends to concentrate it in a general sense. So I think that, pregnant women are at higher risk. Young infants who are breastfeeding in particular are at higher risk. Whether in your situation, whether your goats are at higher risk, I don't know. That goes back to the lack of information and testing. And so without that, we can't say specifically. I think the risk is there. How much it is, I don't know.
Just to follow up on something, in the same way that they recommended until your well water is tested, drink bottled water. If there is a bioaccumulative contaminant like dioxin present, it helps to make sure you've got a clean source of feed. So if there's a way to keep, until you know that the soil is okay, if there's a way to feed your animal that isn't on pasture, it's an expense, right? And not everybody can afford to do that. But by having a clean source of food, you can reduce exposure.
I'd just like to make one comment I wanted to make on an earlier question about EPA. EPA had to know when they were going to burn vinyl chloride that dioxin would be formed. It's criminal that they didn't come forward with that. And I think it's in some ways up to the folks in this room and in this town to hold them accountable. Them and, of course, Norfolk Southern.
We got another question in the back.
That I don't know. That I don't know. Let's the other end of the room.
And they said to me, drink bottled water. But I can bath in my well water, but drink bottled water. It's like, how the hell can I bath in chemical water and it's okay, but drink bottled water, drink. Is that true? I mean, does it make sense? It's not.
It depends on the chemicals. There's a lot of volatile chemicals in this
I
mix.
got a well, and he told me, just drink bottled water, but you can bath.
No, it'll evaporate from your tub, and in your shower, it's even worse because it's going to aerosolize. And the idea that they're taking the chemicals in the creeks and the rivers and aerosolizing them, that's putting it back into the air, and that's why you're continuing to be exposed.
And are those heavy where they would stay kind of low and go down?
No, a lot of them are volatile, they're lighter, and so that's why they're doing that, because they will evaporate, and they readily evaporate. Now, how far they'll go, I don't know. It depends on the concentrations of the winds and lots of other factors.
Okay, we have another question from folks here in the back.
Can I make one quick question?
One moment, please.
I want a question
Oh,
of the
it's you.
audience.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Sorry, I just want a question of the audience. How many of you guys, please raise your hand. I'm sorry. How many of you guys, please raise your hands, are on well water? Okay. And the rest of you are on tap water from the city? Okay. So I'm guessing at numbers here, but I would say about half. Does that sound right? Half on water, well water?
I looked it up today. There's 1,101 wells in Unity Township. 1,100 wells. I just queried the closest this morning. ODNR has a lot of that great information on their website.
I just wanted to add something to the lady's question about the EPA. In the state of Ohio's EPA has primacy on these issues, which means they're the ones that were sitting there when the idea of detonating all of this stuff was there, and they had to approve it. The federal EPA only gets in when this eventually hits the Ohio River, which is a federal navigable waterway. Now it's their jurisdiction. We had a similar situation in Youngstown, Ohio, with a guy who was dumping frack waste into storm sewers, and nothing was happening to him until they found out that it got into the Mahoney River, which is considered a navigable waterway. I have no idea how, but it is, and then the feds came in and stepped in. So the Ohio EPA does have primacy, and they were on scene at the time they made the decision.
All right, can we go ahead? Yes, in the back. No, just go ahead and talk. It's right there.
Brussels sprouts question. We do a huge garden every year, and just wasn't sure we were getting started on it. And what would the radius be? Because I went back to my house, and we're about 5 miles away, and you would have tripped over your shoes without a flashlight in the smoke. So, like, I don't even know. Do you even plant a garden? Like, or do you? What do you even do about something like that? How far out?
Did you say you were 5 miles away and the smoke was?
Yeah, the smoke at my house in New Springfield, I live in like a valley. You couldn't see the wood burner without a flashlight to fill it up. I left the kids at my mom's house on the other side of Columbiana. But I just went home to check on everything, and I mean, you couldn't see anything. And you could see the sky perfectly clear in Columbiana, stars and everything. And just, totally like being in a cave.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you definitely know that the smoke came over your property, I think you have to have that soil tested before you can feel confident about planting anything. for your own peace of mind, if nothing else. But I think if the smoke was there, then the things that are in the smoke, we don't know how much of the chemical had fallen out, but there's something there.
How would that be remediated? Because I raised a dozen pigs, cows, or chickens, turkeys, gardens. Pretty self-sufficient. So at this point, it's zero self-sufficient. So when you take property tax on 40 acres for it, you can't even grow tomatoes.
We've also got some questions from Facebook Live also.
Should I address that question?
Yes, absolutely.
There's no simple way to treat contaminated soil. The only way that I've seen them do it is to excavate it. Just take off the top 6 inches, top 10 inches, whatever it might be. So there's no treatment option.
What about hydrogen peroxide mitigation?
There are some different technologies that are out there, but it's been my experience that the mix of chemicals, most of these treatment technologies are tested on a single chemical. That's never what we see in the real world. The same with what people are exposed to. But in terms of the treatment, these technologies, there are a handful out there. I just never seen them work because of the mixtures, and those mixtures affect their efficiency and the chemistry in how some of those treatment systems work. So it's a real problem when it gets out there. But how big that problem is always goes back to the question of testing and what's in the soil.
Wouldn't an ultra sucker crop work like soy that sucks up all the nutrients, grow it once big to suck up everything that's in there, and then next year you'll be all right?
No.
So Facebook Live, we have several people asking if the school is safe. Apparently there's a waterway that goes underneath the school I'm seeing, or by a creek, and they wanted to highlight that the kids are paying for bottled water at this point if they want it. Yeah, I don't know if that's been ongoing, but still, yeah.
With all the water in town, they're paying?
They're not? Okay, good.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right. She was in 5th grade. She had. Okay. So that was the general question was, if the water's in the school, do you feel the school's safe?
No. I don't think anybody knows because we haven't had the proper testing, honestly.
Do we have another question?
See? Yep. They also only professionally cleaned the preschool. They did not clean all the rooms in the high school. They did the ventilation systems, but they did not clean the entire school. The superintendent even admitted to that.
But here's the issue. In hazmat, we decon our people when they come out of the hot zone, okay? But this is a continued hot zone. So you can clean it, and then it's going to come back. They're over here in the creek aerosolizing water. And what that does is that just throws the sediment up, and it vaporizes, and it's back in the air again, and it's going somewhere.
So where's the EPA? Where we are getting the EPA?
Well, now the federal EPA just stepped in and said they're going to take control of it. So let's see what happens there. The plan that Norfolk Southern put forward through Arcadis, from what I understand, has been rejected. So now the federal EPA has come in and they're going to start dealing with that. We'll see what happens there. But there again, this is all stuff that's being allowed. Like the idea that the offender, the people who spilled it, have the right to say how they're going to clean it up under Circle Act. That's the fox guard in the hen house. But under laws that have been put in place by politicians, they're allowed.
Right.
Just like they're allowed not to have electric brakes, just like they're allowed to have only one person on there. And you've got to be careful with the people that make these laws. You've got to hold their feet to the fires too, because let me tell you folks, this is getting worldwide attention. And God help them if they don't do this and make it right.
it's not affecting just this town, it's affecting all other areas. And it's not just us, well, we gotta have to take care of it. You guys better get to the officials that's gonna go to Pennsylvania, I mean.
Cincinnati,
everywhere.
absolutely. There's testing, it's in every direction that's detected it.
It's going down to West Virginia.
Okay, so two-part question. You keep saying that the dioxin isn't being tested for. What can we do tomorrow when we wake up? Who do we ask? Who do we enforce? Who do we tell? We want tested for this. Who do I write to? Who do I email? Who do I call?
We're doing dioxin testing.
Okay. And again,
You have cards?
I got a pistol.
look out, we're coming for you.
And I'm probably telling you. So.
And then also in regards to cleaning, I know how to clean for COVID. I know how to clean for the stomach flu. What do you use to clean your home for a chemical that you've never known existed?
And just to tell you, one of the things that we're having you sign up for is the free water and soil testing. We do have places, that are donating their time. We're going to start, again, we're going to go into that phase of we want action. These are demands. We wanted to wait until after this meeting to kind of see what people's demands were. What do we want as a community? I mean, people are saying by the town, if we all move away, where are we going to go? One thing that people have expressed that they wanted is this soil and water sampling. So that's one of our main.
We actually have that this weekend. We have some folks that are able to come in Saturday and Sunday. We have some researchers that are going to come in and they will test your whole and look at your whole well system. So just see me specifically after, yes, absolutely, specifically. Okay, so the researchers will be here Saturday and Sunday this week, I think, and I believe Monday. But make sure you see us going out the door so we can see how many appointments we're able to give, and those appointments that we're not able to give this week, we will set you up with more.
One advice I want to provide you folks, especially those that are Norfolk Southern is coming in and cleaning your house, please get your home tested, that all that dust tested before they come in and clean it, because you've already been exposed. So if you get it tested after they pay someone to come in and clean it, well, even though things will still continue to deposit on your surfaces in your house, it's not going to be at the concentration that it might be right now during your exposure. So don't just let Norfolk Southern come in and clean your home without it being tested. I know it's a double-edged sword because you went out of your house for safety things, but you should also, or maybe you take some wipes, take some videos of you taking wipes, figuring out a way to keep that dust simple.
They're not cleaning the houses, they're deodorizing them.
Yeah, that's all.
Misting them.
Well, use PPE as well. Cover up your faces. Use respirators. Use gloves. Don't go in like this is just something that's not harmful to you. Be careful with what you're using. I can't recommend. Maybe someone the scientist down the road can. About what chemicals not to use to make sure you're not mixing something and creating something new.
That's right.
I had heard to save your furnace filters if you can.
Yes.
Most of us
Yes.
Furnace filters tend to hold on to everything, which is a good idea. Another thing, if you take a wipe, it's like a clean.
Diaper wipe?
Well, no, you want something like if you go to the pharmacy and you get sterile gauze.
Oh, okay.
And you take the sterile gauze and you video yourself wiping down the surface. You put it in a Ziploc bag and you seal that bag, and you're basically creating a chain of custody. That you've done this, you've sealed it, you're not going to touch it, and then you have them touch it. If you have them test it, you can utilize that as proof that you're there.
Houses though, like what I didn't take a video of myself doing that. I did that same exact thing. The only thing I didn't do was video.
A lot of us did bag the paper towels.
Yeah, but how do you clean your house? How do you know to get rid of what to get rid of?
Right.
Shouldn't have had
I got a
anything
baby
on it.
that I'm afraid to take it back to the house.
Yeah, and those are good points. Babies put everything in their mouth. Same with your pets.
They crawl on the
Your
floor.
pet doors. Yeah,
I'm ready to throw everything out of my house and throw gas in it and light them out. So tired. I have not been home since it happened. I don't care.
Without appropriate testing to know what we're dealing with, I can't tell you what to do. All I know is with hazmat, we use a lot of Dawn dish soap because it cuts through the grease and all of that other stuff. But, use nitrile gloves, put a covering on, try to do that. But with what's going on here, I think no matter how many times you clean it, it's going to get redeposited.
Yeah, if you buy new furniture, same thing, right?
Yeah. We need to stand on the street corner tomorrow and...
Actually, I was going to respond to that question from earlier about how do you get their attention and how do you get them to test for dioxin. I mean, you've got to use your voices. You've got to call the hotlines. The hotlines are out there, on resources pages, and I can give it to you afterwards if you need it. But flood them with emails, phone calls, tell all your neighbors, tell all your family, friends, etc. Call. I mean, the squeaky wheel does get the grease. It does work that way.
Got a question here.
Okay, so I am local to Lisbon, Ohio. During the burning, I walked outside, didn't even know the burning was happening. I wasn't even alerted, didn't check my phone all day, not really constantly on my phone. I was taking care of household chores. Outside walking my dogs, I see little speckles all falling down on my side porch. We have 24 acres. Is that acreage like non-plantable? I live all the way out in Lisbon. I didn't think it would affect it, but since I saw that right after, I would assume that if there is dioxin, I definitely would have it because the actual debris coming down from the fire in that big cloud hit Lisbon. So I want everybody that's listening right now, I'm in Lisbon, I'm 15 miles away. If you are 15 miles away, you need to definitely be concerned. 100%. Because I was infected. I can't breathe. I'm an asthmatic. So I've been having issues. I mean, my mom, I haven't been able to breathe lately very well. My throat's been sore. My ears have been hurting. I have drainage. And I'm like, I'm not sick.
Yep.
I'm just slowly getting poisoned, I guess. I don't even know what to call it.
How many people had a sinus infection?
I would say sinus. It's sinus, 100%. But I just want everybody that's listening to this, if you're 15 miles away, or even possibly more, you could have definitely been affected by this. My parents are in Rogers. My question in this is, my mom's dog has mast cell tumor. It ruptured. It's open. It is an open hole until we get her into surgery on Tuesday. So we're really worried and concerned about her healing because her skin has died. It's decayed. So she has to go for reconstructive surgery. But nonetheless, sad story. She's making it through. She's a trooper. But how worried should we be? Because she's outside walking in Rogers, Ohio, every day, walking around with an open wound. So that's my question. Like, how concerned should we be? My vets can't give me any answers. She's going to an oncologist.
How old is she?
She's 9. And I'm concerned mostly about the healing. I just don't know what to do from here on out. That's my question.
That's a common story. I mean, it's real though. It's very real for everybody here. And you have to be concerned. You just have to be concerned because of all the things you don't know, let alone what you do know. And until the government takes it seriously what's happening here and starts to do the testing that it needs to do and start to come to meetings like this and listening to all of what you're saying, I mean, they will begin to understand what you're going through and then hopefully will do the things they need to do to try to address the problems here. 15 miles away,
I'm coming your way after this one, guys. I'll do hers, and then I'm going to work my way to the left.
When they detonated...
Okay, I'm going to work to the left, and then I'll come back that way. Okay, guys?
When they detonated the chemicals, there was a 3,000-foot inversion at that point. Now, to explain what an inversion is, when you see smoke, it goes right up into the air and it just disappears into the clouds. There's no inversion. When you see smoke that goes up and turns left, right, that's an inversion. And what it'll do is it'll stratify out and it'll start banking down as it hits the inversion. At the time of the explosion, it was 3,000-foot inversion. You had nor'easter winds coming out into the southwest. By 10 o'clock that night, the winds had done it complete spiral. You're getting southwest winds blowing into the northeast, and the inversion had dropped to 1,000 feet. So, if you want to look at the possibility of contamination, look at what the wind did in a 10-hour period, and that's the level. That's the level of concern that it should have.
Maybe they should have looked at it before they burned.
Yeah, right?
Not only that, I think the ground, under the mines, put a mine map, underground mine map of the South Sea today, from the Ocean Harbor. And there's underground mines that go all the way from here down into Middleton Township, and it creates an automatic conduit. It's a paddle police resistance for all this flow to go that direction. It's very, very clear. Talking to the ODNR folks today, made sure my research was correct. But this area is extensively undermined. So, the groundwater transmission calculations that are typically done for this sort of thing are completely out the window because you have huge viaducts underneath the ground and folks that have sulfur water, like I used to have at West Point, because West Point's undermined as well. You have sulfur water. That can be indicative of you tapping into that mine water at some point for your drinking water. So just be aware that if they tell you, oh my gosh, no, that's too far away. Not only with the stuff that was vaporized, but the groundwater that's going to seep in. You have a really weird groundwater hydrology thing that's going to happen here because of that.
Hi, my name is Dana from MacLeod. My question is air purifiers. What can we do now to alleviate a little bit of this anxiety that we all have, that we feel like we're doomed and there's nothing we can do? Can we get maybe air filter purifiers? What can we do to help, protect ourselves now?
That's something River Valley Organizing is doing, is we're trying to, again, we want to know what the needs of the community are. It's community driven. So the funds that we receive, what do people need? Some of the stuff we're looking at purchasing is air filters, providing cleaning for houses, the soil and water samples. So we are trying to address some of that stuff through our agency.
I mean, do they work? Do they work? Is what we're facing?
Yeah.
The shower filters, the water filters.
Sure. Yeah. So I work out of an organization in Pittsburgh called the Clean Air Council. We started raising money specifically for air filters. We have one. We found a distributor out of Buffalo that has independent testing on the quality of this stuff. They run about $500 a piece. We bought 10. They're going to be here tomorrow. They're already accounted for. We found a funder who's going to give us another 50. So what I'd like you to do is, if you find my director's email at cleanaircouncil.org and send him an email and say, we heard that the Clean Air Council is trying to get these out, that's going to encourage him to go find more funds, because Norfolk Southern isn't going to pay for this, right?
Well, they will.
Until we make them.
But until then, can we get the activated carbon, hepatite filters, and the shower heads and all that stuff to actually help? Will that stuff work?
As far as I can tell, and I'm not the scientist, so please, I'm an organizer.
That's the scientist on that one.
Are you talking in the air or the water?
Both.
Or both?
Both.
I don't know much about the filters, quite honestly. But I think anything you do will be helpful. It's better than nothing. Just breathing the air, having it go directly into your lungs. So, that's not the solution, clearly.
Right.
That is not the solution. And putting pressure to address the bigger picture is clearly what.
Yeah, but we need an answer for right now today. When we go home to our house, that air is not safe to breathe. So what can we do right now today in our homes while we're waiting for the opportunity for a $500 machine? That's wonderful, but I don't have $500 to clean my air for my kids to breathe.
Yeah.
There's other things that are activated carbon. You know, there's activated.
But our question is, does activated carbon work against what we're
Yes.
It typically does. Yeah, it was very helpful.
So if you have anything that you can put filters on, the activated carbon will help with the volatile stuff,
Okay.
which is like the vinyl chloride. If you have a HEPA filter, that will help with any particulates and what might be on the refrigerators.
Thank you.
And they sell cheap chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear suits in some of these outdoor magazines and such like that, and they have activated carbon in the warfare suits, okay, that are made exactly for this. So perhaps if it doesn't bog your filter down or your air system down, you might want to look at putting something like that and taping it over your vents or something like that as an ad hoc fix for the moment.
Let's let the scientists speak for a minute on this.
I think one of the things you could do for your water as well is get a reverse osmosis system. That does have granulated activated charcoal, which will do a lot, plus it also has sand filtration, which will get a lot of the particulates out. Depending on how much water you need for drinking, you can buy them relatively inexpensive, but for larger systems, it costs more money. But the dual, well, even if you're going to use it for washing, at least you have the presence of mind that you're filtering this stuff out. So, you can look into that. Like was said by the doctor there, you get HEPA filters. You can buy a filter for your furnace that has HEPA and charcoal in it. You can look for those. I don't know if there's any HVAC people here that can tell you where to go get filters, but I've seen them where they have charcoal on them for odor control. HEPA to clean the dust particles out for people that have COPD, asthma, emphysema, and stuff like that. So you might want to look into that and put those in your furnaces, because now's the time when they're circulating through.
Thank you. And then we'll have, after one of those, when you guys are talking, we have another question over here. Definitely answer, I'm not trying to rush.
Just a quick follow-up to the filtration. So if you're in a house that doesn't have central air, so you don't have a filter that you can just stick in, I don't know if anybody has seen online, they talk about these, they're called Corsi Rosenthal boxes that people have been building for COVID, where it's basically two box fans that you basically build a box around. It'll work the same way for this. So you can buy those charcoal and HEPA filters, and if you don't have a central HVAC system, just use a couple of box fans. It's fairly inexpensive, and you can still do the air filtration that way.
Great idea.
Save your receipts. Yeah. Save your receipts.
I mean, one of the easy things that lawyers will tell you in any case, this one especially, is document everything. Get a journal and start taking notes every single day about what you're experiencing. When, what time of day was it? Get as specific as you can. It's
Video, if you're sick, so they can hear and
Sure.
see how.
Any kind of documentation of what's going on with you now, that contemporaneous writing or recording can be used as evidence later on. So it's important that you record everything and keep all your receipts. It will help you in the future.
I'm the owner of Friendly Fiber Farms, which is 2 miles outside of town. My question is, what tests do I need to do to ensure that my animals are healthy? Because I just
Batteries charge went down.
I've just now decided to launch my business full-fledged in December. My analytical reports for my business came in. I am losing. I've gone to zero, but I've lost this month 78% of my sales because of the health and well-being of my animals. My animals are healthy. My animals are fine. What could I do to prove that beyond a well test? What test do I have for my animals? As of right now, I'm losing. I need to do something now and fast.
So the one thing you could do is test for dioxin. I mean, if you have chickens, if you have eggs, if you have dairy products, that is something you could test for and show that it's not there. Or it is there. And if it is there, then you have to address that. But there's no simple test. And especially since we don't know whether the cloud reached your home.
I was not ever in the wind direction of it the whole time. I'm from Southwest Louisiana, and I moved here by choice to make sure I have a healthy place to raise animals. So I'm aware. We were taught in our schools what to do whatever shelters in place are there. We are taught what to watch for. I watched it, monitored it the whole time. But the fact that it's happening here, whenever I, by choice, move to a healthier area, it is aggravating. And it's also, what do I need to do? Because this is my main season to be making. I'm having people not only cancel orders, I'm left over with the extra chicks that aren't picked up that I'm feeding. So it's extra cost to extra cost. What do I do from here on out? Where do I go?
I think this goes for not only business owners, but property owners. And this question has come up, I think, on Facebook. There were a number of comments about it. But what do you do about your property values? And that's true for business as well. I mean, you've got a certain amount of value and a certain amount of revenue stream that you're accustomed to, or at least have to have in order to make do. There is a way in the law, especially in Ohio, to recover for what's called diminution in value, which just shows what the change of value is from the day before to either the day after or months after. And that's true for business as well as for property owners, just your homes, your properties there. So again, it's a question of documentation. I mean, for instance, if your customers will tell you that they are not buying from you because of this train wreck, that would be helpful. To the extent that you get that kind of information from them, that would be really helpful.
I mean, I just want to say the bad press, guys, is everywhere. Again, I'm from Southwest Louisiana. You should see what they're saying about any farmers in this area. It's the whole of Ohio. They are planning on boycotting anything grown in Ohio because they do not want to have, and it's crazy because it's polluted down there. I know it is. We know.
The other thing you can do, because this is a farm community, there are farm bureaus. There's a Department of Agriculture.
Right.
There are committees at the state level that deal with farm issues. Find out who sits on these committees. Find out who's on your farm bureaus. Contact those people. Get in their ears. You're paying for this. Your tax dollars are paying for these people to exist. Get in their ears. Make sure they understand what's going on and ask them what they're going to do about it. The more people you can get involved in this from state and federal levels, the more satisfaction you can end up with.
Sir, do you have a question?
Yeah. First of all, I want to compliment you guys for setting this up. This is like priceless. I want to make. I just want to make one comment. If I remember what it was. In the matter of testing, and I tried to signal this gentleman here, and this is all in the assumption that the culprit in this matter is dioxins. This is the chemical structure of dioxins. This happens to be 2378 TCDD. There are only about 5 labs. Whoop. Get rid of my pen. There's only 5 labs in the country that are big enough and able to test for dioxins. So anybody, any independent in the area, you want to make sure that they're going to send those to such a lab. because the detection cannot be made if they can't set the machine up, and not all machines can be set for the detection
Do you know
of
those labs?
dioxins.
Do you know those labs? So we can.
I know about 4 of them. I can find, we're going to hook up pretty close
Yeah, you
with
need to know
these
when
people.
reach out to these labs.
One's in Texas, Dow Labs in Middle Michigan is one. There's one in Arkansas. But there's only about 5 countrywide. So what means is that you're going to be passing a sample over using chain of custody, giving it to one person, they're going to pass it on to somebody else, and with each one of these stages, somebody's going to make a little bit of money out of it. So you might as well go to the best idea you can first pass. The other thing, for anybody here on the panel, because this has been touched on, because people are interested in being able to clean up. I'd like any or whoever wants to address this. Assuming, again, dioxins. Are dioxins water soluble or not? And how is this going to complicate any cleanup process?
We need the microphone back so the other one died.
No, for the most part, dioxins are not water soluble. There's a little bit of solubility, but it's low. And I'm not sure I understand the second part about how it would complicate the cleanup. I mean, the cleanup has to be based on the contamination. So they're going to have to do a lot additional testing, in particular for dioxin. And so it will be complicated. There's no question about that. But in terms of the other question about the labs, EPA certifies these labs to analyze for dioxins. I think it's a little more than 5 these days that are certified for dioxins, but their EPA can provide that information. Their certified list of labs that are certified to analyze for dioxins. So, and there's other labs worldwide, not just in the U.S. that do this. So there are places, and in the past, when there have been a crisis like this, where there needed to be a lot of samples collected and sampled for dioxin, that effort was undertaken, and the samples were able to analyze for them. And so it takes coordination, and it takes commitment. And I think if you folks raise your voices and make the demands that I think you're going to make for testing, that they will do what you tell them to do. But they'll only do it if you tell them. They're not going to do it because it's the right thing to do. They would have already done that if they were going to do it. So now you have to really push them. And you'll need help from folks here at River Valley and others.
Just to clarify something about lab certification, because there will be academics that are offering to do testing for you also. There are labs that can measure stuff, and lots of research labs measure things because it's part of their research. There are not so many certified labs, and so those are certified labs basically that say that they have the stamp of approval of folks like the EPA that they trust those results. It's really hard to mobilize to get everything done directly for certified labs, especially when people want stuff done right away. So maybe the lawyer can speak to this, but what I would say is if you get a result from a research lab or some academic has come to help you out by doing free sampling for you, and it shows something high, then maybe out of that subset you say, okay, we're going to take a subset of that and send that to a certified lab, so then we have the stamp of approval that everybody trusts this result. You have that added confidence there.
Good point.
Just a real quick follow-up. I think that's certainly helpful. I don't know that it's necessary to send it to them. Because basically it's who is more reliable when they take the witness stand. Who's going to be more believable when they take the witness stand? Because you're going to put that, or your lawyer will put that expert up on the stand and explain how the testing went and what protocols they followed, blah, blah, blah. So it's nice, and certainly it would help, but I don't know that it's a necessary piece.
Hi, my name's Tamara. We live pretty extremely close to the derailment site. I guess I have two questions. The first is, you want us to get a baseline reading for blood, water, soil. When do we test again? Is it 6 months, a year, 5 years? And in the meantime, am I allowed to let my kids play in the yard and my dog roll around in the grass if we're still not sure if it's going to increase the levels? And then also with, you were saying about the creeks when they're cleaning them and they're moving stuff up back into the air. We have trucks all day long driving back and forth in front of my house. Do I have to clean it every day? Like, they did have the street sweepers. They were going down our road last week every 5 minutes. I seen them twice today. So, I guess that's...
Well, those are great questions. They really are. But there's no real good answer to that, because the dust is likely contaminated. When the trucks go by, when your kids put on to go out and play, which of course they will want to do, especially on a day like today, nobody knows what they're going to be exposed to. And I wish I could say something different. But you have to, I think, recognize how difficult these questions are to answer for anybody. And part of why it's so difficult to answer is because the simple part of that question is because we don't know the test results. But the other part of it that's difficult is because as scientists, we have not done a good job of determining what levels of these chemicals are safe. And so it's really hard, even with the numbers, to be able to say, okay, this number is okay, but that number is not. And so I want to just tell one story from my experience at Love Canal. I sat in meetings, often like this, but in smaller meetings. Everybody at Love Canal got a sheet of paper with the levels of the chemicals in their home. And I often sat with the families to help them try to understand what the numbers meant. And just to take the example of benzene, because a lot of people are familiar with it, that was one of the chemicals they tested for. And I could say to somebody that, well, you have a higher risk of getting leukemia, and you have a higher risk of having central nervous system problems, and that sort of thing. And then the woman said to me, the mom said, well, what about my 2-year-old? Is he going to grow up and have cancer? And I looked at her and said, I don't know that. And I said, it's not just me that doesn't know. There's nobody who knows the answer to that question. And she turned and looked to me and said, well, how can we be smart enough to put a man on the moon and bring him back and not have an answer to a question like that? And that was 40 years ago, and we still cannot answer that question. So you have to be careful about, we need to have testing because that's going to tell us where the chemicals are. But even with the testing, we're not going to know what levels are safe. So testing is critical to define where the chemicals are, and then that's the information you all need to use to really decide what you're going to do.
Basically, this event is going to set the baseline for what the standard is.
Right.
Because there's no other data, so this event is going to be the baseline for what's safe.
There are, in the case of dioxin, there are some prior accidents in Seveso, Italy, in Times Beach, Missouri, in places like Love Canal, where there were dioxin contamination part of the big picture. So there is some understanding of what levels in blood and what levels mean in general. But it's controversial. And so the answer in some ways lies in doing the testing, because that will tell you where the chemicals are and what the concentrations are. But you have to be careful that then you're going to get into a debate over what's safe, what's acceptable. And the one thing I've learned about acceptable is that the people who decide what's acceptable are not the people sitting in a community like this that's been exposed. It's somebody in academia, it's somebody in government with long credentials behind their name. If an acceptable question or issue comes up, you all have to be represented in deciding what that number is. You have to be part of that decision-making process. If you're not, then I'll tell you right now that the people who are going to decide are not going to be setting a number that you would be comfortable with. You wouldn't set a number I'd be comfortable with. So it's a complicated situation that you're in.
You have a question for readers to take it on the internet for the air quality and all that, the well testing that they did do? They have one, what's it on the internet? The EPA, do you trust those readings or not? Well, I mean, it's hard.
You can trust the readings for what they are, but they're not looking for the things you care about or the things that are here.
Right.
So what value does it really have? You know, it's a practical matter. I mean, if they've just started testing for vinyl chloride. 2 weeks later, they've started testing for vinyl chloride, so there's some understanding of what's in the air with regard to that, wherever those samples are. But it's not enough. It's too late.
Do we even cut our grass? I mean, do we even cut our grass? We have questions.
We have a question. Hold on 1 second. I'm going to let the chief. Hold on 1 second. I'm going to let the chief give an answer, and then you're up next. I promise, because you've been waiting.
Right after you, Chief.
Remember, the EPA is using meters to detect stuff. Meters are, by nature, presumptive testing. Once you find something, you have to do definitive testing to prove it exists. Meters, like you said before, some of them detect things, some of them don't. I could get into a long spiel about using what kind of light bulb they use in volatile organic chemical meters. But you know, it's when you detect something. I know with us, when we detected something, we sampled it, we sent it off for definitive testing to prove that it was or was not.
Just kept hearing different things. One minute it was zero, then it was normal.
So we got a question back here.
Yeah, I have two questions. These are more legal. The first one, within the immediate area, they're offering a $1,000 per person inconvenience check through Norfolk Southern. Do you recommend that we take that, even if it says something along the lines of, you know, like you can still sue us later? And my second question, just to kind of put this out there, maybe from other experience with other disasters. If we were to just, you could essentially foreclose on your house, and then this is the bank's problem and not our problem anymore. Okay. What happens? I
can give that one a try too. The answer to your first question about taking inconvenience fees, I can't give you advice, but I can say that I would want to review whatever documentation they want you to sign before any money is exchanged. My guess is the answer might be how long do I have to respond to your offer? Have some time to think, discuss it with hopefully legal counsel. And as I said, we'll be back here in the community fairly soon, maybe within a month or two, and we'll have legal clinics, and that's a question we can answer for each individual, because it will depend upon your own circumstances. Some of you might need the money right away and are willing to take the risk, and I'm just saying that there are different circumstances for everyone. So it's hard to give a general advice other than take your time, review it, hopefully have legal counsel review the language especially, and you're going to have to decide what's best for you guys. And I think that sort of responds a little bit to the question before about, do you risk having your children playing in the yard? I mean, it's a risk, and I think it's a risk that you're going to have to determine on your own, each one of you, how much of a risk are you willing to take? And that's a tough question. I think it's a very personal decision on your part. So just keep in mind that we can provide information, but ultimately it's your decision. And you guys have the right to choose one direction or another. And as far as the banks go, I don't want to say who cares. Under CERCLA, for instance, which is the statute that US EPA is using to remediate this property, banks generally cannot be held liable for the environmental cost of cleanup on their property that they foreclose on. It usually just gets paid for by the US government, especially under CERCLA. So it wouldn't be the banks, probably.
Where's the microphone?
Right here.
We have the microphone over here.
So I don't know if this is like a redundant question or not, or it's been like asked yet, but so for knee crop seeds, I haven't had this issue yet, but I don't know if other people have had this issue. People that have livestock that have had them drop dead or had like aborted fetuses or something. If you were in PA, are you still sending those to the Ohio Department of Agriculture, or are they going to the PA Department of Agriculture? Like, who is? I mean, things happen, but obviously, like, since we did get exposed, that's going to be like a no question to ask thing.
It's a difficult question to answer because there's what should happen and then what really does happen. And what should happen is you should probably go to your state organization, but now that US EPA has kind of taken control of the cleanup, they might be kind of the central source of, maybe they would delegate that. But I don't think it would be wrong to go to either source, whether it's federal or state. But I think it would be, if you live in Pennsylvania, you go to Pennsylvania authorities, same with West Virginia. So use the state where you reside.
I have a question. So what can we do so that the railroad doesn't do this again? Why is it, they've been deregulated, right? Like they have all these cars with toxic waste in them where they should have been small trains with toxic waste. They don't have the right brakes. They didn't respond appropriately. So what do you do to the railroad to make them regulated? Like, we know the government deregulated, so why aren't they regulated? Why when they're even allowed to carry some of those toxic chemicals, and now they do? Like, they have regulations for like nuclear waste, but this is just as bad. So why aren't they regulated?
So my name is Daniel Winston. I am the co-executive director of River Valley Organizing. And so what I would say is do what River Valley Organizing does. We organize and we make politicians listen to us. Point blank, right? So you need to, for regulations, we need to join together and call your congressmen and call your senators and say, you voted for this 10 years ago, or you didn't say a word about this 5 years ago when they did this. So now I'm holding you accountable because in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, you're up for re-election. And since you're up for re-election, I will do all I can do to make sure you don't get re-elected unless you make sure regulations are put on train companies, especially Norfolk Southern, so this never happens to anyone again, or never happens in our town again, because you just let trains come in after like 5 minutes of cleaning this up. You didn't even care about us. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years to get this right, or I will be knocking doors. I don't care who your opponent is, but it's not going to be you who ever wins again.
Can I say something? So we're nonpartisan, just so everybody's aware of that. We are going to go to every elected official that can do something about this. We don't care what is behind their name. We are going to be lobbying for this at a state and a federal level. We've already been in contact with people on both sides of that aisle. And just know that every single thing that we do is about this and is not about anything else. Because it doesn't matter. We have been forgotten. We have been forgotten. And it doesn't matter what's behind that name. We have been. So it's time for this nonpartisan movement to get together and to fight for our safety.
Let me just add one more thing. My organization, Fair Shake, is one of our core missions is access to justice. And this is really an environmental justice question that I think right now is the time to make use of the attention that is being paid to this community, but also to environmental justice causes. And I would not rely on, as great as River Valley Organizing is, I wouldn't rely on that organization. Do it yourself. Call, write, do whatever you can to make your voice heard. Go over and over and make it an everyday call. It doesn't matter. It really is who is squeaking, and they're going to get the police.
Just want to add one thing to that. Remember, all politics is local politics. All right? Know who you're voting for. Just don't vote because they have a D or an R behind their names. Find out who owns them. And you can do that by looking up who their campaign financially. People do not give money to people anymore because they like them. They give money to people because they want to own them. Find out who is your people that you're going to elect. Find out who's giving them money. And vote accordingly. Because when you allow that to go, Fred's a good guy, we're going to vote for him. So Fred just took and allowed Norfolk Southern to do what he did. Bill's a great guy. Well, Bill took some campaign money and he's not really coming around because he doesn't want to get caught. So all politics is local politics. Find out who you're voting for. Find out who owns them. Hold their feet to the fire. People that are in office now, call them. Their names, their numbers, their telephone numbers, you can Google it through the Ohio House. Start there. Get a hold of Sherrod Brown. Get a hold of your J.D. Vance. Get a hold of all of the other senators and flood their offices.
Congress.org. Go to that site. It will give you an option to put it in your zip code and state, and it lists every one of your legislatures, and you have to click their box.
What was the site again?
Congress.org. You just click on their picture, it sends the email. You can have one email sent to all of them. We're going to have it every day.
We're going to take some more questions, but I did want to remind everyone that please make sure you utilize assignment sheets because we're going to be doing testing and things like that. Another way we know how to get in contact with people is if we have your contact information. So if you want to get those things done, please make sure when you leave that you make sure you signed in. Where is the microphone? Over here.
How do we make sure that Norfolk Southern gets punished? Like the people responsible, the executives, the people who ordered that burn go off. How do we make sure that they are criminally punished, legally punished? Yeah, how do we put them in jail is the thing.
Governor DeWine talked about that today. He wanted them to be criminally charged. That was on one of his interviews.
So there have been criminal charges in Pennsylvania that have been brought up by Governor Josh Shapiro against Norfolk Southern.
Yes.
So if you and your calls and emails and things to DeWine want to ask for the same thing, there's precedent for it.
Just to clarify, the way Shapiro has done it is he's referred it to the Attorney General to investigate whether they're going to bring charges. So charges have not yet been filed, so that could happen. We just don't know. In terms of how can you, say, guarantee or try to get Norfolk Southern to pay, to be punished, it's really, I hate to say this, but it's sort of out of our hands at this point. You can certainly put a lot of pressure on, say, the attorney generals of each state, or eventually maybe the federal attorney general. So you can put pressure on them, but they have discretion, and it's a political ballgame, and they're going to play politics over it. It's going to be a hard thing to win, but you can certainly put pressure. You can at least be heard by public officials, especially in the Attorney General's office. You can make your voice heard. I don't hold out a whole lot of hope that it will influence the ultimate decision.
While you're waiting for the next question, I just have some information from the federal EPA. I actually made a phone call to try to find out what kind of testing was being done. Deborah Shore answered her phone call, who's the director of Region 5, US EPA. She referred me to the on-site coordinator for the federal EPA for this cleanup. He told me that they were not testing for dioxins, that they're in the acute emergency phase, and as they transition to the recovery phase, that potentially that's when dioxins would be tested for. And he said he didn't want to dismiss the concern over that, but there's a process that they were using. And I hope I'm not going to forget the other important information. I get emotional, but the other thing is I made a phone call. I got to the head of Region 5. You just have to pick up the phone, and it's amazing what you can do, the information that you can find. And the other thing that he told me was that they are taking 24-hour SUMA canister testing since Friday night when the derailment happened. Those are more appropriate, more detailed sampling, and they have to be sent away to be analyzed. And those results at that time, which was over a week ago, had not been released to the public. He said all the testing had not been released to the public. So I recommend everybody calling the EPA. You might actually get never sure to answer and demand that those test results be released so that we actually have a better idea what is going on here. Thank you.
I just want to let you guys know we're going to take questions till 8 o'clock, but we are going to do this more often. Again, River Valley is here for the long run. They're not coming out and leaving like everyone else is. I'm hoping that you guys can take this information and share it with other people in the community and tell them that we're getting answers, and we're getting them for people that are not the railroad, that are not the government, and they're not the same answers. You know, all these questions, we have to come together as a community, and we have to get this soil and water testing done, and we need to get it done now. We can't wait.
My name is Karen Boswick. I have two questions. First, the odors that everyone is smelling, is this going to be permanent? And or what kind of timeline can we see for it to clear up? Second of all, my property that I live at has a creek that borders it. I know it's contaminated, the water's contaminated, the soil's contaminated. My question is, what kind of timeline? Because it seems like every day it changes who's going to take control of the remediation. What kind of a timeline do we see for that, my part of the creek, to be cleaned up?
So I think with all the questions that have been asked and all the answers you're getting, the answer is we don't know. And so this is because even when you get results, we can't tell you what is safe, because I can't imagine there's going to be any moment that we're going to get results back for everyone here in the community that's going to be quote-unquote safe. You're going to be giving a risk assessment of your own well-being. You will have contamination in your site, whether it's from the train derailment or from previous. We live in a very industrial world. So when we're talking about odors disappearing over time, it depends on the level of contamination. It depends on what they do to clean it up. It depends on how quickly they get to your site to see what they can do to help remediate that. So when you're getting these answers back, hopefully that you'll get answers, or that the EPA starts providing more detailed analysis, you're going to get numbers. And those numbers are going to tell you something, but they're not going to tell you if you're going to get cancer or you're going to have chronic health problems. Think about, we all know that one person that smoked a pack a day for their whole lives and lived to 99, right? They never got sick. And we know the one person who ran marathons, never smoked a day in their life, and gets lung cancer. So we can't tell you what your life experience is going to be, but we can tell you that they can tell you whether it's contaminated, and then you have to decide if that's a risk you're willing to take. And other people can give you advice whether they would take that risk.
And again, to underline things, they're doing SUMA cans, but once again, this is airborne stuff. SUMA cans are testing what's in the air. And I think what you found out here is it's not just in the air, it's in the soils. It's the precipitous that's come out, it's in the dust that's in your homes. So until they get to that phase, whenever they get around to it, you're going to have to do what you have to do to make your household safe, and we discussed that in depth here a little bit.
I was told they don't find something 2 miles, they're not going to 3 miles. They don't find nothing. I was told that several times. We're testing so far out, so that's allowed, we don't find anything, we're not testing anything, so we're just sitting here waiting.
Well, that's kind of a hit or miss, because when the wind spun around, there were some people in the Youngstown area that smelled chlorine, and there were some people in the Youngstown area that smelled the sweetness of the isobutol acrid. So what you're looking at is you're looking at a swirly cone of contaminants. Some may be in some places, some may be in another. If the dioxins didn't precipitate out for 5 miles, only testing 2 will not find them.
I called the governor's office about stuff, and he gave me 2 different numbers. I called the one number, I didn't something personal stuff.
We're only taking 2 more questions. And like I said, we're going to try to reconvene this and have, we have scientists from all over the country volunteering to come in and give us answers. They're all saying the same thing, but we're going to have more meetings like this. And again, hopefully you guys can bring more people in.
And sign the sign-up sheet, because it's how we're going to reach you about water, soil testing, those things.
All right, I have a question. All right, we're running out of time, so I'm going to cut right to the chase. I need to ask this right now. My mom's been in the hospital for a week now, so who's going to handle her cover for her costs when I need to transfer her here in 20 days? They want $40,000. So her insurance isn't covering it. Who's going to cover that? I've bit my tongue for long enough. She's one of the ones in the hospital. Why is she in the hospital? I don't. We'll talk about that.
That's why we need to stand together and fight, because right now, nobody is being held accountable for that. No one is taking responsibility.
Right.
The only way that we're going to get this done, again, is to raise your voice. You need to get up and you need to start making
I don't know if I have that time to understand what I mean.
No, I get it.
Sir.
Many of us have time.
What's your name, sir? Sorry. Emily right here is going to get your name and your number so we can have a conversation after this, if that's okay.
There's been a lot of talk about trying to stop the contaminated water before it gets into the ground through the aquifer filters, etc. Is there any restrictions on the possibility of contaminated water getting into fracking? Because, buddy, that's going to, you're injecting that on purpose right into the ground.
It's a great question. There's the other side that fracking wastewater is already extremely contaminated. It's radioactive, it has carcinogens, it has heavy metals. Maybe that isn't the biggest concern, because we should just be concerned about fracking waste in general and how proximity to people's homes and well waters and groundwaters. So it's a valid concern because we're adding a slurry to an already contaminated slurry. And the answer is we probably don't know how those chemicals will interact when we slurry together. So it's a valid question without a real answer, but it's something to ask for testing. That's like, stop the fracking. Ask to stop the fracking until they know what will happen.
Where's Jane with tonight? All right. Do you have one more question?
Somebody that hasn't asked.
See if somebody doesn't. She's had her hand up for a while.
I already asked a question.
Oh.
Did you already ask one?
Yeah, I have a good question.
This man right here.
Give it to her. Give it to her.
This is my
I have 2 questions. The first one is out of fear and safety and sickness, if we happen to move out of state to try to stay safe, if we sign up with a lawsuit attorney company, will we still be in the lawsuit or will we be null and void? That's the first question. And the second question is, there was talk about an airplane crash that had precious samples that was going to Texas and stuff. Are those the samples, Norfolk or somebody, that is something that we really needed and now it's gone because the plane crashed?
All right, so this is the first question.
I maybe I should get a break people to raise their hands if you've been contacted by any of the class action lawyers that have been filing lawsuits. How many have been contacted by a lawyer?
Contacted or
Well, no. Who's been contacted by them first? Okay. Some. It doesn't look like that many, which is good. If you have already agreed to be part of a class action or part of that suit, it doesn't matter where you live. Moving out isn't going to necessarily change your claims. It might. You'll still have the claim. The damages might be less, which is a good thing, but you might recover less. A class action suit is really complicated, and it takes a very long time to get through the court system, years, literally. And if a class is certified, and I think it will be in this case, because we've already got 8 lawsuits filed just in the Northern District of Ohio, I'm sure that a class will be certified, and most of the people in this room will qualify if they choose. All I'm saying is that you've got a lot of time before you have to choose whether you're going to participate or not. You're literally years. So make your decisions now based upon what's best for you and your family. The class action lawsuit and those lawyers, especially if you want to participate, they can be contacted later. And there's no immediate need to be part of that suit now. You've got plenty of time, and you can talk to us at our legal clinic, eventually, other lawyers that you might trust. Those are the folks that can give you really hardcore answers that will help you make those decisions, because they're hard decisions.
Which when those meetings happen.
Yeah, we'll let the public know once those meetings are scheduled. There was a second question about the plane crash. Does anybody want to take that question at all?
I'll take it.
Oh, there we go.
I have not heard that news story, so that's news to me. But
It is on it.
okay. If they did contain the samples or some samples that came from here, my guess is that there were probably split samples taken here. Since, in other words, somebody has half of whatever was taken, so they can still be tested. Whatever that specific data point was going to be can still be determined by further testing. So I don't think it's something to be concerned with. As long as you don't have relatives or friends who are on the plane.
I was sweat on that one because I was like, I don't think anybody's going to answer that one. I said, whew, lucky there's a lawyer here.
Is there any signs that the only birds we're seeing is crows?
If I may, I'll be quick. We won't take long. With the onset of spring, and my grass is over.
Let's go.
Now, when I'm out mowing my grass on a nice sunny afternoon, am I going to be agitating those chemicals all over again? I know the answer, but we're going to see where we go.
It's a great question. If the dioxin particles settled on your grass, and I don't know that it did, but if they did, then you would be redisturbing and redistributing that in the dust when you cut your grass.
And then subsequent to that, the following time that I mow my lawn, am I going to re-agitate the particles I've already agitated in the first place?
And
it's an ongoing thing, I'm sorry.
Right, especially if you use like a mulcher and everything goes back onto your grass.
Okay, thank you.
Let's collect it and send it to Shaw.
All right. Can you say it really fast?
Yes, really fast.
Will you love me for the rest of your life?
Let's go, I'm ready.
All right, sweet.
Okay, so all of you guys were put in charge of cleanup from here on out, and you found that there was dioxin. What would your quick steps be, and how do you clean this up as quick as possible?
Well, I'm going to default to his first answer, which is soil is really, really difficult to remediate, right? And so when you have hazardous waste sites or toxic waste sites, what often they'll do is they'll cap it. They'll come in and they'll put a cover over it so that it's not exposed to the air anymore. You know, they'll often put something impermeable on there, and then they'll put fresh soil on top of that so that it can't get out again. So that's what's done at deeply contaminated sites. For some chlorinated chemicals, you can do some bioremediation, but that takes years. So it's not something that'll like solve your problem very quickly. So I think that this is going to be a big question if they do find dioxins, how exactly they're going to treat it.
I think what I would do is I would make sure that everybody in town who wanted the option to leave during the cleanup had that option. And I would then have the community hire a scientist who would be part of the cleanup team. Somebody that you would choose, that you would trust to be part of the cleanup team. I think I would have the cleanup establish some kind of task force that would be able to have all the players, and there's a lot of players, sit together, or at least a representative, to share information. You all, for example, would have a member on that committee. You would bring your concerns as a community to that group, and then you would have the ability to gather the information and have the information that's being shared. So I think those would be three things that I would want to do as a first, just off the top of my head. Those are things that I think would be really important.
We would like to thank everyone on the panel for coming and giving their expertise. Thanks all of you for coming out and giving your questions and answers. Just a few things as we leave. There is food out there by MJB's Barbecue. I think it was donated by MJB's and other people, so thank them for that. But make sure you take some food. I think it's in to-go containers. Yeah. And then follow us on social media for next steps, and be looking for our community organizers to be knocking on your doors to talk to you about this. If you have
what was your first name again?
Talk to us. There are members and red shirts to say River Valley Organizing.
Over here.
You can talk to them. You can come here and talk to me. But thanks everybody.
Alrighty, folks. If you're still watching this here live, please smash the like button. Again, we're here in East Palestine. We're at River Valley Organizing's meeting here, town hall that just happened. In the middle of the meeting, you came in with some news that I think is extremely notable about the US EPA coming into town. Do you want to just share what that was again?
Sure. Well, I actually called Deborah Shore's office, the Region 5 US EPA director. I got through to her. I first want to say I really appreciate her time and attention, and the fact that she actually referred the on-site coordinator, cleanup coordinator for the federal EPA to call me to answer my questions. And what I found out from him was that they are not testing for dioxins. They are not testing for dioxins at that time, which was like a week ago. He said there are stages. They were in the acute emergency phase, and they'll transition into the recovery phase, and probably at that time they would start testing for dioxins, and that he didn't want to minimize the concern, but there was a process. He also said that they coordinated with the Ohio EPA, federal EPA, the Department of Health, and the emergency management agencies on their protocols, because I was concerned about them just using the handheld monitors. He told me that they've been using, since the Friday night, the time of the actual derailment, they've been taking 24-hour SUMA canisters testing samples, which is and they send them off to get analyzed. And that is a sample that goes in greater detail about what is actually in the air. And so he said all those test results had not been released to the public yet.
And even if those results were released to the public, again, the big red flag here is those are not testing for dioxins. Am I correct in assuming that?
Right.
Which, as I'm forgetting the gentleman's name, but the health and science expert who was up there, it seems like the biggest concern and biggest takeaway that I'm seeing from this meeting was that dioxins haven't been tested for by the EPA. The US EPA is, now here. They're currently not testing them, and we need to go through the process to get to the next stage for that to happen. That seems insane when that is the #1 priority of the folks in the town. It seems like everyone is really concerned about this. Thank you for sharing that information with us. I guess, do you live right here in East Palestine?
I live, no I don't, but I have been an environmental and a community advocate for years, battling the oil and gas and petrochemical industries, and I support River Valley Organizing in their efforts and just here trying to do what I can. And I've learned that your voice matters, and to take action and make phone calls, you can really get important information. And I really was impressed with Deborah Shore, the fact that she answered her phone, she took so much time, and she actually had the on-site coordinator of the disaster call me. So that says something.
I'm happy that they're getting back to you. That's at least one step.
Yeah.
I'll be a lot happier when they're testing for dioxins, because in the folks I've been talking with, we've been here all week talking to folks every single day, and that's come up on more than one occasion, and nobody seems to get the right information on it that they want to get.
So my suggestion is, everybody who's concerned, call the EPA, call them once, call them twice, call them 3 times a day, call the governor, call the Department of Health, call everybody you can, and make your concern known and your demands known, and it'll work.
Right.
People power, you know?
Absolutely. I mean, even with politicians and things like that, you need to be pushing and pushing and pushing. The cavalry is not coming for you unless you go for it. We heard it a couple times tonight. The squeaky wheel gets the grease. Folks got to keep making the noise about it. Thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Alrighty, guys, we are here live in East Palestine. We're going to try to get a couple more interviews with residents here. Again, this type of reporting is tough to do. John and I have been here for a week. We're already planning our next trip back. We're going to be at the town hall tomorrow night with Aaron Brockovich as well. If you're able to become a member, that's the only way we're able to do this, okay? StatusCoup.com/join, $5 to $10 a month to become a member. If this is the first time you're seeing us, hit the subscribe button to make sure you get notifications. We've got tons of content coming out from East Palestine every day. All right, we've got more and more coming. Bear with me here for a second as we try to get a couple other interviews here. Okay. We can even go outside, John, too. I think there's a lot of folks out here. We'll see if we can find Jamie. See if we can. How are you, folks? Would you be willing to chat about your experience? Do you all live here in East Palestine? Okay, you're fine. No problem. No problem. Thanks, guys. Sure. Oh, yeah. Yeah, stay right here. I'll bring him back.
Just asking. I had the lady
When you're all set, would you mind talking with us? Awesome. We'll be right in the back here. All right. So up next here in a second, guys, we're going to have a chemist here joining us, who John and I actually met earlier today, and he's going to be able to explain a lot more about dioxin and why dioxin is so important here. Again, the last woman we just talked to had spoken with the representative from the EPA, who said dioxin is currently not being tested, hasn't been tested, isn't being tested right now, and won't be being tested for until this moves on to the next phase of this recovery. That did not sit well with the vast majority of the people in this room, and for good reason. People are extremely concerned about this. The effects of dioxin are extremely dangerous, and in just a second we're going to have an expert on here to talk about it. He's just wrapping up a conversation. Again, if you can become a member to join us at Status Coup, StatusCoup.com/join is the only way we're able to make this sort of reporting possible. We've got a couple new members already, so we've gotten 2 to 3 new members during this live stream alone. Thank you so much for joining. Again, it's only possible because of folks like you. I'm going to go over and see if we can get him over here, but he's having a conversation. Bear with us for 1 second, folks. I can see. I'll see if I can get Ashley for a second. Do you mind talking for a second? Awesome. We're going to bring Ashley over here. Ashley, here, we'll bring Ashley on over. Thanks for joining us again. We're live. We got folks watching us right now, so thanks for, there we go. Ashley is someone we've been talking with while we've been here. She's actually been out hanging flyers on doors to kind of raise the awareness about what Norfolk Southern has been doing here. What are your reactions from the town hall tonight?
A lot of it I already knew, which I wanted to ask questions to let other people know as well. Like I had talked to you guys about the air monitoring outside, and now they have just put up the canister air monitors. They're like a balloon machine that reads. So that will actually give a better accurate response of what's going on in the air. There's a lot of concerns, and a lot of them actually pointed me to my assumption, what I thought. My house is probably not livable.
Say that last
My
part.
house is probably not livable at this point.
Which is extremely unfortunate. I can't imagine being in the situation. I've been saying this time and time again this week, like folks like you are being put in an absolutely impossible position. I mean, we even heard the one resident tonight ask the lawyer, like, what happens if I just stop paying for my house and foreclose on it because I'm starting to run out of options here.
You go bankrupt and your credit goes bad. You won't get approved for another loan, and that's something I'm facing because my mortgage was so low. I had no other expenses, and that's honestly something I might have to look into, or just letting my house sit vacant.
I know I've seen you posting about dioxins quite a bit in the Facebook groups and whatnot here, which is where a lot of residents are sharing and getting their information from, because, frankly, officials are not giving you the correct information, and you all, especially after tonight, it's more clear that you're all right to be asking these sorts of questions, right? What are your thoughts on the fact that the EPA, even with the testing they're doing right now, as we heard during this meeting, is still not testing for dioxins?
It's wild to me. Even with the reports that I have from my own independent tester, there's ethanol, a large amount of ethanol, which that affects your central nervous system. And I just spoke with them on the panel again to verify everything that I found in my house affects your central nervous system. So some of those chemicals could have came together to make those, and they're not even sure. I'm not sure. But what else isn't being tested for?
Absolutely, and I mean...
Independently, you know.
Right, no, absolutely. And I mean, again, it goes thing after thing after thing. Soil tests aren't being done. I mean, we're talking kids and babies living in these households, and they're being told that it's safe. Meanwhile, this came up a little bit tonight. The cleaning service that's being hired by Norfolk Southern isn't HVAC certified. How much are they actually cleaning your house? If they're cleaning your house and there's still stuff in there and you've got a little baby like the gentleman who asked that question tonight, what are you supposed to do?
And that's the main thing I pointed out with Sanifec from the beginning. I called them and asked them directly, what kind of cleaning products are you using? And he told me the exact cleaning product, and I looked it up, and it doesn't cover that. It's just basically a spray that you make your house smell better and slightly disinfect it.
And it's a shame. So I've talked to more. I heard this initially from another resident, Jenna Catone. I heard this from you recently the other day. We ran into another resident named Jeff. He took us into his home and was showing us around, and he actually had like a sense of comfort. He was like, oh, this company came and cleaned my house. They were hired by Norfolk Southern, and they told me I'm all good. And I filled him in on the information. I was like, look, I'm not an expert at this, right? But spraying cleaners for a hospital, cleaning bacteria and viruses and all these other things is not going to kill these chemicals. This is a huge miss, I feel like, that unfortunately it's giving folks a false sense of security that could be doing more harm than good.
What we should be doing is treating it like a biohazard, because we don't know what form it could take. We don't know what cleaners that should be used. Everyone's suggesting to use gloves, masks, anything to protect yourself. But if you do clean it, and like they're doing the street cleaning, like another person brought up, is that going to go right back into your home? Are you going to have to clean it again? Are you actually cleaning for the right things?
And for the viewers, too, I mean, we today saw street cleaners going around all day long. We've seen them a couple different times. Again, for folks who live closer down by the train tracks, every time a train goes by, you're getting all sorts of dust kicking up. We talked to another resident today in an interview that will be posted tomorrow or the next day likely, and he's seeing trucks pulling away from the site of the crash, and they're being loaded in uncovered vehicles in many cases. That gentleman was used to work at a nuclear plant, and he was like, there are ways to do this without making a big mess, and that doesn't seem to be what's actually happening.
And it seems like the only way anything's getting done is if we're talking about it. If everyone's aware, just like how you spoke to the other man that didn't know about the cleaning. We all have to be loud and voice things and not be afraid, because we could help someone else. We're all sitting ducks right now.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that all that's going on. I mean, like you just said, thankfully, like folks like you are out here stirring up the pot, trying to keep this out there and getting out there. I mean, I wish you the best of luck. We'll stay in touch. Ashley and I have been texting back and forth all week. We're going to be headed out of town for a bit over the weekend, but we're already planning our next trip back because this story is obviously immensely important. This is the most important story in the United States right now, and it should be the most important story in the United States for years to come as this cleanup needs to take place.
And here's another thing that people should know. Today I went and did a follow-up for my doctor. I showed him a rash that I developed today on my back, and he said that's from chemical exposure. It's not okay. If you realize your symptoms are coming when you're here and going when you're not, you don't need to be in your house. Do not go in there. So if anyone has any kind of worry, they should go to the doctor. Find out what the best thing to do is. Get a blood test.
Absolutely. And what's unfortunate is the clinic in town, we had reports from folks, was telling people, oh, you've got a rash? Like, that's probably from the stress. Like, are you telling me that almost half a town probably has a rash and it's from that?
Well, my doctor was really open and straightforward with it, and he did say that there were an overwhelming amount of people. He seemed stressed himself, running back and forth, and when I left, the waiting room was full. So he was really open with it, but I have heard EPA has said it's stress, or you can't get a hold of them. I even flagged down EPA person driving, and I said, hey, I feel really loopy and dizzy, and he's like, I can't listen to you. So, I mean, I made sure to let him know, but they don't want to hear it.
Ashley, thank you so much for taking the time. Good to see you again. I'm going to just grab here. We've got our, if you want to swing on over, I've got John here with us. Do you mind standing right back here so we're out of the way here? Yeah, and I'll just say one thing before we start talking with John, if that's okay. You can stay right here. Again, Ashley is another person we've been talking to since even before we arrived. This sort of stuff is tough to do. John and I have been on the ground here for a week. We're going to be here a couple more days, and we're already planning the trip back. If you're able to become a member to support this kind of journalism that we're doing here, actually getting involved with the community, statuscoup.com/join. It's as cheap as a cup of coffee a month, okay? It's easy to do. Please do it. Joining me now, we've got John here, who we met earlier today. He informed us a lot of information on dioxin that I think would be really helpful for the viewers to understand. I guess you want to we'll recap a little bit about what we were talking about this afternoon with dioxin to help folks understand.
Oh, yeah. Well, they covered it, pretty well from the panel. But what I recently found out, and I looked at the reports that come down from the state on the water testing, they didn't even test for dioxin. Now, if you don't look for something, you're never going to find it.
Agreed.
All right. So, in my opinion, they weren't looking for something they didn't want to find. Now, I told you about a short minute and a half audio. I think because of the noise level, I'll send it to you if you give me a link.
Yep.
But I think what we're looking at is a dioxin problem.
Okay.
All of the symptoms I'm seeing people are having with the chloroacne.
Explain that. So the chloroacne is the rashes that...
is one of the probably more subtle symptoms of toxic poisoning, particularly with dioxins. And you'll get an acne, extremely bad acne all over your face, maybe your neck. And this can be very, you can have permanent disfiguration on your face, neck, ears.
And this is as a result of being exposed to dioxins and...
Yes. And of course, the water issue is something else, which I think we talked about earlier today. Yep. You ingest the dioxins, and they actually go to the liver, and they attach to the lipids. Unfortunately, they never go away. They just build up and build up and build up. So if you're talking animals, and particularly like dairy, and cows, and it ends up in cow's milk, it ends up in cheeses and everything downstream of that. So,
and to be clear too, I mean, an interview we'll be posting later today. We spoke to some residents who are there. They know farmers and folks who work in agriculture, and some folks, I mean, it's normal to take water out of the streams to be feeding your livestock and whatnot. I hope right now that is not the case, but that's a real possibility.
Grazing right down to the streams. So there are so many, and I'm sure you guys got the flavor from the panel. there are so many questions that were answered we simply don't know. All right, but you're never going to know unless you look. I know that they haven't been exercising all of their vision to say, well, what possibilities are out there. Chemical reactions are pretty predictable. They should have known that what they did was going to create dioxins. And dioxins don't occur in the natural. They only, when
man-made. Earlier when we
industry, yes.
Earlier when we were talking, we had the cattle example of if they were to ingest it, it gets into their lipids and into their liver and whatnot, that it can actually be passed on to the next generation.
Genetic, yes. It actually, they consider dioxin toxic poisoning to actually last for 3 generations. Because it actually goes in and attacks the DNA and affects the DNA, and the DNA is, a hereditary process. So,
and it sounds like the testing for this is fairly complex. I know they talked about mass spec testing, and that this is there's only a handful of labs in the country that can potentially test for this.
Yeah. Now, the doctor that was speaking and some couple others, but my latest information is that there's really only 5 labs. Now, I just talked to one of the fellows that actually is making the connection, and he's saying that they're going to hook up with a lab down in Cincinnati. What I fear is that going through a lab in Cincinnati who can't do the testing because they have to set up their equipment for the testing. They're just going to have to pass it on in a chain of custody to some other lab can handle that. I don't know. That's out of my pay grade.
I guess. Go ahead.
But because of the complexity of getting accurate testing for dioxins, doesn't make an easy process of going down to the corner and have that.
Absolutely. And then we've talked a little bit about it in animals. I mean, the effects of dioxins in people. Are you familiar with what those symptoms and signs would be?
Well, they could be. And it depends on age.
Right.
But from what I understand, you can look at things like toxic shock syndrome, vaginal bleeding, spontaneous abortions. There's quite a few things.
Right. And I'm sure they're leading in the longer term cancers and things like this.
Yeah, eventually cancer, because of the fact that the poisons, the dioxins, are not washed out of the body because of normal urine processes, and you might have heard during the thing I asked, I left it up for anybody and the doctor answered it, it is not water soluble, which opens up another can of worms in cleaning up after this.
Right. And to just hit this point home a little bit too, currently, no one is testing for dioxin in East Palestine. The U.S. EPA is not testing for it. The Ohio EPA isn't testing for it. There really aren't even private tests that have been published for this. And you just heard what some of the side effects are: spontaneous abortion, bleeding, cancers down the line. And no one is currently testing for this in East Palestine. If that's not headline news on every single thing everywhere.
Amen. You can't keep your eyes blinded to something that is this big of a problem in a small town community.
Mm-hmm. And just to give folks some of your background, what's your background of where you've learned all of this, your expertise?
Oh gosh.
It can be the short version. I just want to make sure we're talking to an expert.
Short version. Okay. Well, I'm presently involved in what they call electromechanics. I'm an electromech. And I have a company that does that. We deal with motion control. All right, keep it simple. But chemistry goes all the way back. Chemistry is fascinating. It goes all the way back to junior and senior high school chemistry, then Ohio State. I was really in a pre-pharmacy / pre-med. And so I had 3 years of chemistries, organic chemistry, inorganic, qualitative analysis, quantitative analysis. So the problems that we're seeing here, I can read them. I can understand them. You know, they were in my under my umbrella.
Yes, yeah. Well, go ahead. I was going to say, John, thank you for taking the time. If there's anything else you want to share, feel free, but I appreciate you explaining this to the audience well.
You know, I would just ask, because of the gravity of this whole thing, the perfect storm, you know, these people need prayers and all the help they can get. Because up to this point, and up to yesterday, maybe the government wasn't giving them any.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Thanks so much for taking the time, John. We've got your card. We'll stay in touch with you, all right? Thank you for sharing. I appreciate it. Thank you. So that was a great explanation for why the dioxin testing is so damn important, okay? Again, no one is testing for dioxin in East Palestine. That was by far the biggest concern in the room tonight. You heard some of the health effects that can happen as a result of this, okay? We talked to Ashley just before this. Ashley's been talking about this for a while. She's been doing her own digging. So has so many other residents of East Palestine who deserve these tests to be done in their town, and it's not happening, okay? This should be headline news everywhere. These people deserve way the hell better than what they're getting. Way the hell better, okay? If you're watching this right now, smash the like button, okay? If you can support this kind of reporting, okay? We're able to get experts like this gentleman on. We're going to follow up with John after this as well. We spent some time talking with him this afternoon so that we could do this tonight with him here, okay? This type of reporting is tough to do. StatusCoup.com/join. We've gotten a couple new members today already, I know. We've had probably 40 or 50 or so since we've been on this trip. As low as $5 to $10 a month, okay? That's cheap. If you can't afford it, fine, that's good. Subscribe. If you can't afford it, though, it's literally the price of a cup of coffee per month. That's it. That's all we're asking for, okay? I'm going to see if we can track down a couple other folks here, so bear with me. John, I'm going to tell you something. Bear with us for 1 second here. All right. Let's see if we can find Jamie potentially here.
You don't know if you're going to get
I'm gonna sneak right behind you if that's okay. How's it going? Would you be willing to chat a little bit about River Valley organizing some more? And
somebody else can.
Okay.
But yes. Also, big fan. Thank you for everything you're doing up here.
Thanks.
Was unfamiliar before.
Oh, nice. Cool. We got someone familiar with Status Coup over here. Yeah. We're actually live streaming right now, so which is okay. Again, folks watching, we're working to get you some extra interviews here. I know we had quite a few watching throughout the whole event here. Smash the like button if you're able to. Press subscribe. Even folks here are saying they're big fans of the reporting we're doing. So if you can support that, please do. We'll see if we can. How's it going? Are you an East Palestine resident?
I'm not an East Palestine
Are you
resident.
close by?
I'm with the Rivers Waterkeeper. We're environmental nonprofit.
Gotcha. Would you be willing to chat for a little bit?
What are you going to talk about?
I mean, we want to talk about everything that's going on here right now. If you're dealing with water and environmental, I mean, we've been talking to residents for the last week at this point who live on some of these streams, and Leslie Run in particular. Today we were talking to some folks who they were saying right after this happened, I mean, the water changed color, they could smell it basically all night. What do you think, with your knowledge of the subject, the type of restoration plan that's going to need to come into place? How long is something like this going to take to clean up?
Well, when you're talking about restoration plans, that's really a challenging thing to talk about because each part of the stream is going to have a different restoration plan. The first thing is to stop the additional contamination. And then you have to go in and reevaluate and look at each location of that stream that's contaminated and figure out which chemicals they were contaminated with and make a plan. Thing that was really talked about today is that there's not one contaminant that was released. There's not one chemical. There's a suite of them. And each area is going to have a different level of each of those, and some may have some contaminants and some may not. So a really thorough understanding of what's in the site is what's going to need to be able to clean it up. And whether or not it can be cleaned up to a safe level is another question as well.
Right, and absolutely. It seems like a concern with water and with air. There's a list of chemicals that we know came out. There's a list of things that we know, things like dioxins and whatnot was obviously heavily discussed tonight that aren't being tested for. Is this something that we've seen in other instances when there's a disaster? I'm not sure if this is an area of expertise for you, but where testing is being done, but certain things are seemingly being left out that we know exist. I mean, the US EPA isn't testing for dioxins. That seems like a major red flag to me. I'm not an expert in this, but is that something that we see with these sorts of cleanups?
Sometimes the cleanups prioritize cost, availability, and speed. And that isn't always the safest way to prioritize testing. So we have seen in past instances when the right things aren't being tested for, that doesn't mean what they're testing for isn't the right thing to test for. They're just missing things. So just because you aren't lying or you're not doing something, that doesn't mean it's a complete picture. And so that's what we're really advocating for here is a complete picture. Just a couple sites sampling for a couple different things and coming in and saying it's safe is not the whole picture, and it's not allowing the community members to determine their actual amount of risk that they're exposing themselves to. Also, safe is not a black and white answer. Safe is a spectrum. It's amount of risk. And each home, and each area, and each lifestyle is going to have a different amount of risk. And that's really something that the individual needs to take and understand to be able to decide what they want to do about the contamination in and around their home.
And it's so tough. I mean, hearing you say it, it's like prioritizing speed and money. These are people's lives we're talking about. These are people's children we're talking about. These are people's animals we're talking about. It's been driving me nuts seeing all of this stuff happening. And again, the fact that the biggest concern in this room tonight was clearly the things that we need to be testing for aren't being done. We had the gentleman holding his little newborn baby, or his wife was holding their newborn baby. I mean, how can we be in the United States of America pretending we're caring about everyday people like the residents in this town who frankly deserve way the hell better than they're getting? I don't even know what to say about it.
I mean, that's a fair concern, a fair observation, and definitely what we're seeing now. I think the idea that we're, not necessarily prioritizing the people, the problem is we're prioritizing reducing panic, which means they're prioritizing not sharing all the information. And that's the challenge. They're making assumptions that this community, that these individuals can't make their own decisions about their own risk if they had all the information. So instead of allowing them to decide if it's safe or they're willing to accept the risk of what is possible in their living and staying in that area, they're taking that away from them and just giving them blanket answers, which is only causing confusion and mistrust. And that's not going to allow for a prolonged cleanup, which is what's going to be needed. This is a multi-year long, if not multi-decade long process that's going to happen. And it's going to be a really long time until we really see the true repercussions of our health in our community.
Absolutely. Thank you for taking the time. What was the organization you're with again so that folks can check it out?
Sure. Three Rivers Waterkeeper. We're an environmental nonprofit, and we work to protect the water quality of the Ohio River, the Allegheny, and the Monongahela as well, which are the headwaters of the Ohio River Basin.
Thank you so much for your time. What was your name?
I'm Heather. I can
Heather.
give you my card.
Yeah, that'd be great, actually, if I could have it, because we potentially want to follow up with you down the line here. Thank you so much, Heather. I really appreciate the time. Awesome. Thank you. I really appreciate it. All right, guys. That was Heather. She is, I'm going to read it right off again here, Three Rivers Waterkeeper. We're going to definitely stay in touch with her. I think that's a great contact to be able to have. Again, she said it right there, loud and clear, prioritizing speed and cheapness of these sorts of things to happen. It's a shame that this is what's ultimately happening. Would you mind talking for a second? You did a great job explaining a lot of the talk about dioxins and everything tonight. the testing, that the fact that it's not being done, that the U.S. EPA, even at this point, still isn't providing any dioxin testing. What sort of concerns do you have about that going on, and how will dioxins potentially affect folks who live here who might encounter it?
Well, if they don't do the testing for the dioxin, then people will never understand what the risks were they were facing here as a result of this accident. They'll understand some of them, of course, but they'll miss out on a big part of the danger and the risks, the health risks. And so dioxin is an extraordinarily toxic substance. It causes cancer, reproductive problems, developmental problems, immune system problems, diabetes. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. So, but these are all subtle effects that will affect people over their lives. So it'll be hard to say that it was the dioxin that did these things, but it will contribute to their adverse health.
I guess, do you have any idea why the U.S. government at any level, the EPA, isn't testing for this?
I can only speculate. What I suspect is they're afraid that if they test for it, they'll find it. And because it's so toxic, that people will be justified in their concerns and their fears about what could happen to them. So they're kind of a little bit of the ostrich sticking their head in the sand, hoping that people don't push for this. They know better. The agency knows better. It's a long history of studying this chemical, these class of chemicals. And so the fact that they're refusing, or not so much refusing, just avoiding testing for it, speaks to me that they're afraid of Pandora's box.
I mean, that sounds negligent. It isn't even a word that can even get close to describing it, in my opinion. I mean, we're talking to folks who are already in an impossible situation here, and the government, the United States government, is afraid to test for this because they're worried about the implications. The fact that they're not worried about the people of this community instead is, I don't know, I don't even have the words to describe that.
Well, this is not the first time this has come up, and this is how government responds to these kind of situations, and that's a problem. There needs to be, this country does not have a SWAT team, if you will, a response team. When something like this happens, there needs to be a team of experts and the resources for them to do what they need to do to address the health risks. When you have an infectious disease problem, the CDC flies in and they have a team of people. When you have contaminated food problem, again, there's a team of people that come together with different expertise, and they know what to do, and they know how to test for what they need to test for. That doesn't exist for toxic chemicals. So you end up with the kind of chaos that's happening here, and it's something that's repeated itself in community after community. And that can't continue. It just can't continue.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it. You did the folks in here a really good service tonight. Thank you. Thank you. Again, just to hammer this point home even more, dioxin is causing things such as birth defects and issues. It's causing bleeding and things like this. It's causing cancers down the line. It's causing a whole laundry list of things that are going to affect this community if they pop up, but we don't even know if it's here because they won't test for it. Again, if you just heard that right here from the health expert they had on the panel tonight, he says that in his speculation, that they're not testing for it because they're afraid that it's going to pop up and that the repercussions that it will have. Again, even the person just before, Heather, that we spoke to, why are they not testing for dioxins in the water? To save on time, to save money. Time and money, apparently, to the U.S. EPA, the United States government, is more important than the lives of the people who live in East Palestine. Let me say that again. The United States government is more focused on getting these tests done fast and cheap. They're focused on making sure that they don't test for dioxins because that could open a whole new can of worms. And they care about these things more than they care about the people who live here. You can't make this stuff up. You can't make this stuff up. We're going to try to get a couple more interviews here. Please press the like button. If you're not a member already, become one. StatusCoup.com/join, as low as $5 to $10 a month. Most of the other folks are out of here. We've got at least one crew left. We're out here actually talking to people. We broadcast the whole entire meeting live for you all, okay? no one else was doing that for the most part. There might have been one or two indie people in there doing that, but there certainly were not any of the mainstream outlets doing that. Okay, we're gonna see if we can get another person to talk to here. Bear with me for 1 second. Oh man. We're looking to just talk with somebody from River Valley Organizing. Don't mind chatting for a second? Awesome. Thank you so much. What was your name?
Emily.
Emily. I'm Lewis.
Hi, nice to
Thank you so much. Awesome. So we're joined here by Emily from River Valley Organizing. Again, River Valley Organizing, you've probably seen an interview with Jamie at some point already this week. We've been talking with Jamie, and she's helped connect us with a lot of folks. I'm sure she works with you as well.
Yeah, she's awesome. Jamie's our lead organizer for the project, and I work as development director, so I've just been helping out where I can, but she is the community, basically.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, for the first day we got into town, actually, we saw her literally walking through the entire line of people at the Assistance Center. She talked to every single person in that line. And we'd been talking beforehand before we even got here. And I saw her and I was like, I guarantee that's Jamie. And I walked up to her, and sure enough, it was. I guess, what are your thoughts on how the town hall went tonight in general?
I think it went really good. I think people, trusted that we brought people in that were of academia, who had scientific researchers, people that have, authored books and, many, many papers and studies on these things. So they're not part of Norfolk Southern. They're not part of the government. They're independent. So, while we couldn't provide answers to everyone's questions, it was good to get a feel of what the community wants, which is where we want to go. And also to get a feel of if they've had testing and how that's went for them. And so we'll be contacting everybody that was at this meeting and seeing if they want to do that independent water and soil testing, which is going to be immediate, but then is going to be also long-term to check.
And again, I mean, to your point, this was a great panel. You all did a great job selecting people. You can tell, the questions that were able to be answered were answered. The questions that weren't able to be answered were not your guys' fault or the people in the panel. It's the fault of the United States government, the EPA, all these folks who are Norfolk Southern. Yeah, most importantly, Norfolk Southern. Let me say that. Thank you. Yes, there you go. Check that out. Make Norfolk Southern pay. You're good. You're good. I mean, the fact, Dioxin was a big conversation tonight, and that's, to me, that was the big, this is a huge deal. So is testing in Dioxin something that you all will be looking into?
Yeah, that's something we're going to be looking into, and it is really important because we have a lot of farmland around here. So people were talking about, the pastures, the grass, the water that, the cattle intake, those types of things. So people have serious concerns, and people are losing business when we don't even know if their farms are affected because just of, the general news and what's gone out. So small businesses are really suffering, small farmers, small business owners. So yeah, it'll be important.
Absolutely. And we heard at least one woman tonight say, her business is down upwards of 70% because people are afraid to purchase her products. It's and the area in general, that's agriculture is a big industry here. And on top of that, folks, are going to be concerned about even eating in local restaurants and things like this. It's the fact that the dioxin testing isn't happening beyond the health implications, but also for these other things, is insane to me. And it's crazy that folks like you all have to step up to try to make this sort of thing happen.
Yeah, we don't want to lose people in our communities. We don't want people to have to leave, but we want to make sure that the places that they're in are safe. And they deserve that. And anything we do, is going to be community-led. We're not going to be canvassing with people outside of the area. We're not going to be having people leading things outside of the area. I myself am from about 7 miles from here, 5 miles between the track. So, our big focus is that this is community-led, that if the community wants to go at Norfolk Southern in, several different ways, then that's going to happen. Also, RVO on a nonpartisan side is going to be, lobbying and for congressional change because unfortunately, with every administration change, the EPA and other departments, change hands, and we need lasting legislation that is bipartisan, that makes us safe here, and that we're not forgotten.
No, I appreciated that message that was getting out there tonight with this, that it's like, hey, we're nonpartisan, whether you're on, one side or the other. Look at, a couple folks mentioned, look at who owns these politicians. That's the most important part. You need to get out and voting. I had a conversation with some folks at the Roadhouse today. We went and had lunch at the Roadhouse, and we ran into a bunch of people we've already talked to this week. And we had a great conversation with someone who was like, he was like, how can we get rid of these people who are here? And the thing that I said, I was like, people need to pay attention to the really small elections, and they need to pay attention to the primary elections more so, especially if you've got a district that's safe Republican, safe Democrat. The only chance to really get rid of the person who's there is to pay attention in the primary. And unfortunately, the media doesn't want to cover the primary. So it's relying on folks to get out there and go do this.
And that was good advice from our retired battalion chief, and it has hazmat training that in Youngstown. He gave very good advice around that. So I thought that was good in the town hall. Also too, just to push this home, the transparency is that didn't happen has already placed distrust for people. So now whoever is working, including us, needs to be incredibly transparent with all of our processes. And I think that the EPA needs to be speaking more about what's happening, so we can, ensure that they really are in charge of this cleanup. We're glad Norfolk Southern is paying, but we're so happy that the government did that. But how is this going to be monitored, and what are people to expect?
Right. Because initially, the transparency wasn't there. You had the railroad paying for some of the testing. You had the Ohio EPA potentially paying for some of the testing. The companies that were being used, we did a bunch of digging into them, CTEH, as well as Tetra Tech. Both of these companies have troubling histories of issues with falsifying, information, mishandling documents. If you want transparency, obviously that's not the right. I'm not a PR expert, but I can make that decision.
Yeah, that's not the way to have transparency. What I really think needs to happen too, if I could say this in a tactful way.
Yeah, you're fine.
We have people on both, I guess, I don't want to say sides of the media, but we have media that isn't reporting this. We have media that is sensationalizing things and taking away attention from what's really happening. So I would just challenge all the media, no matter what side you feel like you want to go on. If you're in the middle, if you just are dedicated to straight reporting, which I love, please make sure that you're talking to local people before you write any story. And I'm not saying it has to be River Valley. I'm saying any resident, because what people are experiencing as a whole, a lot of people are connecting things. And one more thing I'll highlight, and I'll be quiet.
No, you're fine. This is great.
The health clinic that was put on by the health department is not a health clinic. So what it is it's a document. I'm a nurse, so just so everybody knows, I'm a nurse by background, 20 years. Have my master's in health administration, and I can tell you what's being run as a documentation and referral center. So you're not going to see a doctor, you're not going to get a diagnosis, you're not going to get medication or a blood or urine test. I'm not telling you not to go. You should go if you want, but what I'm saying is that you will have to go see a doctor after that. And they are apparently referring people, which is awesome. But it should not be called a clinic, because that's not what it is.
And what's unfortunate is I actually ran into Governor DeWine the other day after a local resident I've been talking with for about 2 weeks at this point tipped me off. We had just been at her house the night before interviewing her and all of her neighbors, and she sent me a text and she's like, Governor DeWine's right across the street right now. Nobody's asking him any questions. See if you can get over here. We happen to be 4 blocks away. I asked him, I was like, hey, I talked to 5-6 people on this street last night who are experiencing this, everything from the bloody nose with their kids, dry eyes, sore throat. 2 of them had ended up in the hospital needing nebulizer treatments. I was like, what should they do? And he referred them to that clinic. So that afternoon, we went to the clinic and found exactly what you just said. They're not providing tests of any kind. They're not providing any sort of diagnosis of any kind. And instead, what hasn't really been I haven't seen this out there very much, some of those residents sent me pictures of what he did leave at their houses, and it was a cookbook and a cookie from his wife's cookbook. It's like all good that's going to do.
There was the political stunt that was pulled, at the houses when our representative of our district, Bill Johnson, and our governor drank water. you know, you took a sip of water, okay? You know that's not going to hurt you. But I would challenge them to come and spend the night in some of these houses by the railroad when people are waking up with rashes all over their skins and nausea and headaches and coughing, and they still feel like their sinuses are clogged and they can't. I would challenge them to come spend time in that home and then see how they feel, and then, you know, then to let the public know if it's safe or not.
No, I agree 100%. I mean, these folks they're messaging me at different nights saying it's really bad tonight. I don't know what's going on. Like something's it seems worse tonight than last night. And again, the response has been sad. I guess, is there anything else you want to share?
No, that's it. Thank you so much. And
Thank
you know,
I really
thanks.
appreciate
Have a
it.
good night.
Yeah, thanks. Again, guys, this situation is absolutely horrific. I mean, every single person that you talk to, it's just clear. Again, they are not testing for the right things. The politicians involved, for the most part, are pulling stunts like DeWine did, like she just referred to here. They're going in and taking a sip of water to tell everybody that it's fine. Again, I broke this news yesterday. The school in East Palestine, the middle school, and I believe the other ones as well, and we confirmed this with 3 students. We played the video earlier today. It's on the channel. We confirmed it with their parents, and Jordan confirmed it with the superintendent. The school water fountain, like where you can fill up your water bottles in East Palestine, are open. A kid can go up to the fountain and fill up their water and drink it, okay? Meanwhile, that water is not being tested for dioxins. It's also not being tested for other chemicals that weren't on the train. And they're also, those tests that have been done were done by either CTEH or Tetra Tech, both of which have questionable pasts. Would you let your kids drink that water? I don't have kids, but I wouldn't let my nieces drink that water. And it kills me to see some of these little kids that we're meeting in town, and they're there, and fortunately their parents are telling them not to, but some of them might not be. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous, and none of this is being talked about in the appropriate way, in my opinion. Again, a lot of there's exceptions to the rule. There are a couple good journalists in town, right? There's also a lot that aren't. Again, when I interacted with Governor DeWine, there was other press there. They didn't ask him a single question. I walked right up and I asked him a couple hard questions. He was not happy about it, but that stuff makes a difference. We need to hold these people accountable. Folks need to hold these people accountable, and journalists, that's your job. You ask the hard questions. It's not that hard. I don't have a journalism degree. I'm passionate about this, okay? If you want folks like me, folks like Jordan, and others to be on the ground at these places, okay? This is the only way we're going to get it out, is by becoming a member, okay? StatusCoup.com/join, $5 to $10 a month. It's the price of a cup of coffee. We've got 30 new members today alone, guys. That's awesome. Let's see if we can get even more at the end of by the end of the stream right now, okay? If you're not able to become a member, you can still subscribe. If you can't afford, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, share our videos. There's going to be a whole lot more coming out from East Palestine. This is our first trip here. It is absolutely not going to be our last. This is going to be a story that is going to require trip after trip after trip after trip to make sure we're following up with these residents. As the woman from River Valley Organizing that we just talked to just said, we need people to be out here actually talking with the residents, okay? I am spending a lot of time. John is spending time getting to know these folks. Jordan's doing it from afar. We are putting the time in this community to make sure that we can actually report what's really happening, what the community is really feeling, okay? To support that sort of thing, StatusCoup.com/join, okay? And if you want to just make a one-time donation, you can do that as well, StatusCoup.com/donate, but we really appreciate the membership, all right? We'll try to see if we can get 1 or 2 more folks here, but we will also read Super Chats at the end of this as well. We'll see if we can snag 1 or 2 more people. I'll see if we can talk to Jamie for a second. What was that? Yeah. Stay over here and we'll see.
Up in Middleton, we have people that have lost their jobs, people that have gone back into businesses to work that haven't been clean, people with no Social Security cards that can't get reimbursement. We have people with animals. Like, there's just so many different issues. It's overwhelming. My friend that can't get the home health care committee. Like, these are things that people aren't, like you're hearing from these individual stories. We're all fighting the same battle but we all have different issues. And how do we get that much help? They're never going to make it whole. They make it. They can't.
You can take your time too.
If I can stand up.
You can sit too. I can sit with you if you want.
Right.
It's up to you. Let's sit. Why not? I could honestly, I want to sit down too. Thanks. Sorry about that.
We started canvassing the neighborhood at neighborhoods at 9 o'clock this morning. So I'm like.
Yeah, no, long day. So we're here with Jamie. We've talked to Jamie before. Jamie has also been absolutely instrumental in getting the stories that we've been getting out. So I want to seriously thank you, and thank you for all the work you've been doing here. You're walking around, and folks respect you. Folks know that you're out here actually fighting for them. And I know a lot of our viewers and everyone who are watching, and me personally, I'm seeing it, and you're crushing it out here. So I know you might not get the recognition all the time, but you deserve it. You're working your butt off over here, and it's obvious. I guess what are your thoughts after this town hall here? How do you think everything went tonight?
I think it went good, but I think I have more fear. Even though we helped organize this, I hadn't sat down and talked to the scientists. And it's exactly what I expected. They don't know. There's all this, they can say what they think it is, but people don't know because it hasn't been tested. And that's what I've been trying to drive home. That's why I wouldn't go home. If you haven't tested it, you can't tell me that it's safe.
No, absolutely. I mean, the conversation around dioxins tonight was alarming, eye-opening. I mean, I said earlier, if that's not freaking front page news on every single thing across the United States that this isn't being tested for, I don't know what should be. We talked to a woman from she was like a water environmental activist, and she said one thing to me that really stood out, and it was like, the reason it's not being done is right now the government is prioritizing speed, cheapness. These sorts of things are they're putting let's get this done fast and cheap over people's lives in East Palestine to save a couple bucks.
Right. And where's the supervision? The EPA came out and said the railroad covered up that pit. Why wasn't someone watching?
Right.
Why were they allowed to do that? I've never been one of those people that believe in the government conspiracies, but I believed what I saw with my own eyes and what I smelled. When they said it's safe, evacuation lifted, go back home, I'm like, I don't care what a scientist says. I know my gut instinct. I smell it. I see it. So, yeah, it's...
Yeah, and I mean, we also, it's
overwhelming. Like I said, the amount of issues that we have right now, the things that we just learned, that as we sit here right now, we could be breathing in. I'm feeling very overwhelmed right now. I'm feeling angry. I'm pissed. Nobody is coming in to help. I mean, we're seeing some of the politicians now. We're getting some of the help now. But why didn't we get that before? Right. Our lives do matter.
Absolutely. I mean, the fact that it's taken essentially almost 3 weeks at this point. I mean, it's almost 3 weeks since this happened initially, and now now the EPA is coming, now FEMA is coming. That delay is outrageous. That when something like this happens, what happens early on is going to be what's most important to make sure that this all happens, right? You got to make sure that these folks are taken care of. We talked to your health expert tonight, and I asked him, and I was like, hey, why do you think that the U.S. EPA at this point, we just heard tonight during this meeting, isn't testing for dioxin? And he told me, he's like, it's speculation, but I think that the government is worried the can of worms that they're going to open if they find it. They're worried about the can of worms they're open. They're not worried about we saw the gentleman with the little baby in here asking, what am I supposed to do about this?
Because how do you remedy it? The pollution is so widespread. How do you remedy it? And I talked to men that were sitting there with tears in their eyes saying, as protectors, we're supposed to protect our children. We can't do that right now. We're taking them into homes that we don't feel safe in, not because, we want to, but because we have to. We don't have the means to pick up and move. We don't have anywhere to go. Someone from the railroad said, well, why are you driving from West Virginia? You can't stay with family? And like I said in there's 47 of my family live within this 1 mile zone. Which one of their houses should I have went to? I just feel helpless, I guess. We need help. We need help now. We don't need money years from now. We don't need, to worry about anything else except for immediate needs and getting people out of here. We're being poisoned slowly. That's what's happening.
Shame. And I mean, even today they were talking about the water. Ronnie and some of his friends that we interviewed them the other day, and it was like he came up, he's like, oh, can you interview me and my friends? And I'm like, I'd love to. Let's just make sure it's okay with the parents and everything. And they're like, sure. And I'm asking him because I think that the impact on the kids it's insane that these kids are having to go through this right now. So I'm asking them how it's going, and I asked them how it is at school. And the kids told me that they can fill up their water bottles inside of the school still today. We just heard, again, in there that the water isn't being tested for dioxins. The tests that had been being done are being done by CTEH and Tetra Tech. We've done some reporting on both of those companies. Both of them have questionable past at best with issues of falsifying information, with mishandling of data. And in the schools, because the water is safe, a kid could fill up his water bottle right now. It drives me nuts.
Right. It's safe, but drink bottled water. The mixed messages. It's safe to breathe the air in Mahoning County, but stay indoors. The fact that there's nothing around these creeks, that those kids still go down there and play in the creeks. And I feel like, with DeWine, I drank the water. Bring your kids down and play in the creek with mine this summer. There's a huge difference, switching that focus to, we keep getting the message the water's fine. You're talking about the drinking water, and you're talking about right this second. So it's scary to me the way that words are being manipulated, what I feel like, to keep people in the dark. They thought we were just going to lay down and take this. We weren't going to say anything. And do you think all those people would be in town now? Do you think FEMA would have been here if it wasn't for us raising hell? Nobody would be here. Nobody cares.
The only reason that people are showing up is because of folks like you getting this out here. Folks like a lot of folks you've referred me to. Candace has been out getting all this information. Jenna Catone. I just want to shout some of these people out because you all are working. Oh, you all are working super hard to get all of this message out there. Even we talked to Moo the other day. Her story is so tough. She was told, like, okay, yeah, it's fine to stay here, but just stay inside. And then, days later, someone comes knock on the door and she's not feeling well in there. She's been diagnosed with the bronchitis of some sort, and she's not really doing well. She's got an inhaler and everything like this. And she was told she literally told me, either leave now or you're going to leave in a body bag. You can't make it up.
And the stories of the people that couldn't leave. My nieces had a friend of theirs who their father said during the controlled burn he didn't have enough gas money to get out of town. So those kids were here, and their dad put them in the attic to try to keep them safe. That's not fair. We're human beings. These are our lives. These are not politics. These are not big corporations. This is not about anything except for lives.
Jamie, thank you so much for taking the time and for all of the help you've given us in connecting us with folks here. You know that we're going to be in touch with you even when we're not in town here, and we'll be back soon. Thank you for everything that you're doing. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for coming in to cover it.
Thank you. Thanks, Jamie. Yep. Here, we'll scoot over here a little bit. Let's spin around. I've got some stuff over here. Guys, obviously, this is an emotional issue. This is potentially going to be killing people, right? Dioxins are not being tested for. I can't stress this enough. It is absolutely insane that the United States government is not testing for this at this point. If you're able to help support this kind of reporting, and then we're going to get to super chats and start to wrap this thing up here soon. If you can support this kind of reporting, meeting with organizers like Jamie, connecting with all of these residents on the ground to get this sort of message out there, statuscoup.com/join is the way to do it. $5 to $10 a month, okay? That's the price of a cup of coffee. It's one beer that you don't need to have on Friday. If you can support this kind of reporting, it makes it so much easier. It's tough to do. I wish I could be out here for free doing this, and John, but we got to pay our bills too. It's also hotels, flights, rental car to be able to make all of this sort of stuff happen. We've got several more trips to East Palestine already planned. If you can become a member, please do. StatusCoup.com/join. I'm going to read some of the super chats now. Again, we got tons of new members today. Let me see if I can find the super chats. John, do you already have any pulled up here? Oh, there we go. Got it. Alrighty. 99 cents from Fly, Chomper Fly, Sleeping Face. I just saw a text from Jordan. 35 new members today. 35 new members today. You guys are crushing it out there. Let's see if we can get a couple more even before I'm done reading these super chats. 99 cents, Sleeping Face. Thank you. I don't know what that means, but that's fine. Overprotected 1111, 9.99. Type in Janie Lane if I reverse. Is that something crazy, or do I know? He sings forward and back simultaneously. I'm worried if I read that one that it's going to be something weird, but thank you, Overprotected 111 999. Above Things Love, $4.20. Status Coup on location yet again. Yes, of course we are, and we are going to be back, like I said already. We're going to be back here. Thank you for the super chat. Above Things Love, Fly Chomper Fly, 99 cents. Thinking Face. I wonder if I'm making faces, and that's why he's doing that. Sleeping Face was the first one. Thinking Face. Thank you for the additional super chat. Fly Chomper Fly. Another one, $2. Here still while grocery shopping. Captivating. It was. I mean, that meeting in general, folks here definitely learned a lot while they were here tonight. Unfortunately, they learned a lot of really hard things, especially related to Dioxin. We've got another one here, $4.99 from Jay Fraz. Keeping the spotlight on this, guys. The mainstream media isn't going to, especially this EPA news. I agree. Hopefully it does get out there. It's insane to me that the EPA is not doing dioxin tests in this town yet, and they haven't been doing them at all. Reese Pro, new YouTube member. Thank you, Reese Pro. We appreciate it. Tech Guy 32, new YouTube member. We appreciate it. Again, if you can support us by becoming a member, you can do it on YouTube, but we prefer you do it on StatusCoup.com/join. YouTube members are great too, but they take a little bit of a cut. If you do StatusCoup.com/join, we get all of it. We've got another one here. It's $10. Jordan, give Lewis the Pulitzer already. Incredible reporting and interviews. Thank you, Jordan. Appreciate it. Michael Reach, $20. Can't put a price on this kind of journalism. Michael, we appreciate it. Again, I'm doing the best I can out here. I've got a strong teammate behind the camera over here, John, who's also been crushing it as well. We've got another YouTube member, Sharon O'Hara Bruce. Thank you so much for joining, Sharon. We appreciate it. We've got another new YouTube member, Gigi Starlings. Thank you so much. And then other new members at the bottom here. We've got new members Steven, new member Christina, new member Dale, new member Reese, new member John, other new member John, both spelled differently, new member Cassidy, and new number Coulter. We also have a StatusCoup.com /donate donations. We've got those donations from Reese, Joy, and Karen. Wow, that was a lot. And it looks like we actually have a couple more. Another super chat, $4.99. Lewis has and continues to crush it. Thank you again. I got a strong partner behind the camera here, John, who's helping to make this all happen as well. $4.99 from Jay Fraz. Provision in Obamacare allows residents in areas deemed to be a public health disaster to be covered by Medicare for life. Requires the EPA to do its job. I'd have to look into that a little bit more, but if that's the case, they absolutely should be doing that because these folks should not have to be dealing with medical bills that are not their fault. Although, in reality, I think Norfolk Southern should be paying for it over Medicare, but they got to be covered one way or the other. They shouldn't have to pay it out of pocket. If it's got to be through Medicare, it should be through Medicare. But I'd rather see Norfolk Southern be paying for it because they're at fault here, 100%. Let's see. Chris Garrett, $5. Lewis, don't you ever say again that you're not a trained journalist. You're a better journalist than those you've seen in East Palestine. Keep going. I appreciate that. I've learned as I'm doing it here. So I appreciate that comment. Guys, thank you so much for watching all this tonight. We've been live a whole bunch today. Again, we're here in East Palestine. We were just at the North River organizing town hall event that went on. Thank you all so much for watching. Please, if you're not subscribed already, press the subscribe button. We're going to have so much more content coming out over the next couple days. With that, thank you all for watching us all afternoon here. Have a great night.